Chapter 65. What is really cruel? Chapter 65. What is really cruel? Thud, 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 thud. For consecutive sounds of broken bones could be heard as the four quickest men who charged at EMO were kicked flying. It would be extremely hard to tell which one received the first kick, and even those with good eyes were only able to see a few blurred kicks. The rest of the men who wanted to charge up were knocked by these four people and crashed into the stone wall. Everyone else froze, wondering how the man could be so strong as the damages dealt were already so big. A youth behind the leader of the U gang reacted quickly by taking out a gun with the intent to shoot at EMO. However, a light gust of wind blew past him and, before his fingers could even touch the trigger, there was a bloody hole on his forehead as he collapsed on the ground and died with his eyes wide open. Silence. At this moment, no one even dared to make the slightest move. This man came to the door and killed 5 people in a few breaths of time, and this didn't even include the 2 he had killed at the door before. He killed that many people, but they didn't even see him move once. The leader of the U gang finally caught on the situation. He realized that this young man was a dangerous one and was definitely one of these special masters. So he hurriedly said, "Friend, there must be a misunderstanding between us. Although we damaged that pagoda, we really didn't know that place was yours. Please, I'm willing to pay double for your losses." Yemo sneered and raised his hand. The 2 black men from the U gang who wanted to open fire had suddenly a hole appearing in each of their foreheads as they fell to their death. Meanwhile, the pistols in their hands flew out a long distance away. This time, Wang Xian managed to catch a glimpse of his movement. The young man barely raised his hands, but this simple movement resulted in 2 immediate deaths. The objects he shot out seemed to be faster than bullets. This person was too strong. Pay for my losses? Can you even afford it? Besides, you hurt my friend Fong Nan and killed his men. Even if you could afford it, I'll make you go back to where you came from today. Yemo didn't waste any more time talking as the metal nails in his hands flew out like hail. There were a lot of people, and Yemo's spirit sense wasn't powerful enough right now. If everyone attacked him at the same time, his spirit sense wouldn't be able to cover it all, and he might be injured. Since he was planning to fight anyway, he might as well get rid of a few men before they could react. Brothers, kill him. In an extremely short period of time, more than 10 people had already died. After that yell, Wang Xian hid behind the others and looked for a window from which he could escape from. Wang Xian had initially thought that this stone house was grandiose, but because of the situation they were in right now, it became the place he loathed the most. If it had been some other house, there would probably have been a back door or a hidden passage in case of an emergency like this. However, not only there weren't a single door he could use to escape, but the windows inside that stone house were so tight that it would be extremely complicated for a man to go through. His only choice was to try pulling out one of the windows, but even after a long time, he still wasn't able to move it. Blood was spewed, and the sound of gunshots and knives clashing into each other was resounding all over the stone house. The scene quickly erupted into pandemonium. However, Yemo guarded the door and didn't let a single person escape. Although Yemo had a spirit sense and he attacked very fast, usually killing those with guns first while dodging the flying knives, there were simply too many people attacking him. His spirit sense couldn't cover it all, and he wasn't able to avoid one bullet that lodged itself in his leg. However, at the same time he had been shot, the shooter was killed by Yemo. Although the gun wound wasn't serious enough to threaten his life, it seriously annoyed Yemo, and the metal nails started to fly out even faster. A few minutes later, the rustling noise in the room stopped. Other than Wang Xian, who was still trying to pick the window open, even the leader of the U gang was laying on the ground, dead. The stone house was full of bodies, and yet, there weren't much blood stains. This was because Yemo always took care of them with one nail. Yemo took out the bullet lodged in his leg and treated his wound. Then, he stared coldly at Wang Xian near the window and said, "I don't think you need to try anymore. Do you think you can still escape now?" Hearing Yemo's words, Wang Xian suddenly looked behind him. Immediately, his hands and feet went cold. A single thought lingered in his mind. What sort of person did I offend? More than 40 people against one, but none of them lived. Well, it's more like other than him. Everyone else had been killed. It took him a long time before he could even say another word. Please, have mercy on me. I'm willing to give you everything I have, and I am also willing to be your subordinate. Wang Xian had killed countless people, but when it was his turn, he finally realized death was such a scary thing. Fangnan, I'll leave this to you. You can deal with this one. Yi Mo turned back to leave. Fangnan and a few of his henchmen were waiting outside nervously, and when he heard Yi Mo calling out to him, he asked his men to help him go inside. At this moment, Yi Mo had already left. Fangnan looked at the scene in the room and couldn't close his mouth for a long time. The room was full of bodies, except for Wang Xian, who was shaking right now. Fangnan suddenly felt a cold shiver down his back as he thought, "What is cruel? This is really cruel." He had killed countless people but had never killed this much by himself, and yet Yi Mo left calmly as though nothing had happened. For him, murder was as simple as breathing. No wonder he scared so much someone as ruthless as Wang Xian that he couldn't stop shivering. When he killed, it was the brawls between gangs. It appeared to be very scary with blood flying around, but they were mostly light wounds, and not a lot of people died. There never had been someone who could kill the opponent's entire gang. However, Yi Mo had killed all of these people, and yet still appeared like usual, as though he had just killed a few chickens. His face remained expressionless. Then, Fangnan suddenly thought of the day when Yi Mo came to this place with him, and sweat ran down his back. If he had just acted a little tougher that day and had some bad intentions, there wouldn't be a Fangnan in this world. Fangnan had never seen someone so strong. At the same time, he had never seen someone so ruthless. Luckily, he respected Yi Mo from the bottom of his heart and had tried to be friends with him. Otherwise, Fangnan didn't even dare to think about it. Leader Fang, have mercy. I'm willing to give you all of my assets. I just want you to spare my life. Wang Xian's plea interrupted Fangnan's contemplation. Immediately kill this bastard and clean up the bodies in the room. Rock, immediately come with me to see Brother Yi. Fangnan left the things here to his men as he only wanted to check on Yi Mo. Brother Yi. Fangnan was carried by two men as he came to Yi Mo and called out to him respectfully. Originally, Yi Mo was just someone strong and mysterious in Fangnan's eyes, who deserved his respect, but now, Yi Mo was more someone he feared. Fangnan, Yi Mo seemed to be deep in thought. Brother Yi, I'm here, Fangnan hurriedly replied. Thinking of a moment, Yi Mo said, originally, I was planning to live here for a while, but I didn't think that some things wouldn't go according to plan. So, I will simply leave. Brother Yi, you're leaving? I can immediately help you build back the place that was destroyed, Fangnan quickly said. He thought that Yi Mo was leaving because the pagoda was destroyed. Yi Mo waved his hand. Fangnan, right now, you decide what happens in Flowing Snake. I know what you do to make a living, but don't cross the line. As for blocking the road and robbing, don't do it if you can. Business is easy at the national border. However, I hope you won't do any drug business. These sorts of things harm only yourself and the others. This is all I have to say. Perhaps I will come back one day. After finishing, Yi Mo turned to leave without the slightest hesitation. He didn't want to stay at a place where the silver heart grass couldn't grow. Even if he had to hide from the Song family, he wouldn't do it at the price of inhibiting the progress of his cultivation. Fangnan was a decent person and helped him out quite a lot, but if he couldn't even control Flowing Snake in its current state, then he wouldn't have the right to stay here. After Yi Mo walked out a long distance, Fangnan finally awoke and said, Brother Yi, I definitely will do as you say. Yi Mo didn't ask him for someone to escort him back, so he didn't dare to make that decision himself. Chapter 66. Where did he go? Chapter 66. Where did he go? Ning Qingxue had already bought the place where Yi Mo used to live before. She felt that staying in Yu State was a torment and wanted to find Yi Mo, but she had no idea where he went. Ning Qingxue, who could no longer remain in Yu State, returned to Ninghai, and although she came back to this small yard once again and the place didn't change, the person wasn't there anymore. Sue didn't know that the property had been bought by Ning Qingxue and still lived in her original room. However, recently, there were people constantly questioning her and investigating the surrounding, and eventually, they even took away all the surveillance computers. Sue had a feeling that this was related to Yemo, thinking back to the time she spent with Yemo together. She just remembered that she didn't even know what Yemo did. Sue, who just opened the door and was prepared to go out shopping, suddenly saw Ning Qingxue standing at the doorway by herself. She was stunned for a moment and asked subconsciously, "What are you doing here?" Ning Qingxue knew that Sue held a negative opinion of her, but she didn't feel that Sue was wrong. In her opinion, her understanding of Yemo was even less than Sue. "I'm living here because the rental period isn't over." Ning Qingxue didn't want to let her know that she had bought the house. If she did say it, then Sue would probably move out of here immediately. However, Ning Qingxue wanted things to be the same as they had been before. Yet, she knew this was impossible. Even if everything else was the same as the original, Yemo was no longer here. Sue wanted to say something to Ning Qingxue, but she didn't know what Yemo and Ning Qingxue's relationship was like. Besides, Yemo did pay for a year's rent here, so she didn't say anything in the end. However, she didn't want to stay any longer, so she left to pick up some groceries. Ning Qingxue went back to the room, looking at the place that looked exactly the same as before, which left her with an indescribable feeling of sadness. That bed, she was even laying down with Yemo and took photos on it. She had even tried to go farther into the act, which had even been noticed by Li Mumei at the time. Was that feeling before her true intentions? After sitting on the bed for a while, Ning Qingxue cleaned up the room, leaving everything exactly where they were. However, Yemo's small medical case was still in her luggage. For her, that was perhaps the last thing that Yemo left behind. She opened up Yemo's medical case again, and finally, she couldn't resist to take out Yemo's letter anymore. She had always resisted the temptation of opening it, but this time, after coming back to the place where she had lived with Yemo, the temptation was too strong for her. As soon as she opened it, a beautiful yet strong handwriting entered her eyes. Ning Qingxue didn't think Yemo's handwriting would look so bold as if it would come out of the paper. "Hello, Xiao. I left this letter for you before I left. Originally, there were some things I wanted to give you, but you hadn't been to school lately. Coming here, I was a lonely person, and you were my only friend. I was kicked out of my family, and my original father-in-law had broken off the engagement in front of everyone. The only friend that hadn't left me was you, so I consider you as my true friend. In fact, the thing I'm most grateful for was that day when you woke me up. If you hadn't done it, perhaps I would never have been able to wake up ever again. Sigh, I don't have a place to live anymore for these past few days, so it's inconvenient to write. But when I have found a place to settle down again, I'll write another letter to you. This is it for now." The letter stopped suddenly, but Ning Qingxue knew that the reason Yemo didn't have a place to live was because of her and felt even gloomier. He was a lonely person, but she had hurt him even more. Now, she was also a lonely person. Ning Qingxue packed up the things and left the room. Sue had come back, but went to wash the veggies and didn't talk to Ning Qingxue anymore. Ning Qingxue walked to the flower pots where Yemo grew flowers in the backyard. She wanted to care for this place and grow some flowers too. A fresh bud made Ning Qingxue look at it for a long time. The place where his small bud grew was the place where the silver heart grass grew before. Ning Qingxue remembered that the grass with a silver color in the middle was cherished greatly by Yemo, but also remembered that after the grass had disappeared, Yemo was gone as well. Was this bud that grass from before? Ning Qingxue once again carefully fenced up the surrounding of this grass, creating a protection that looked exactly like the one Yemo made before. No matter whether this grass was the same one Yemo grew before, Ning Qingxue decided she would care for it because its place was the same as that plant from before. Sue had cooked food and, when she saw that Ning Qingxue was still taking care of the flowers in the garden, she felt intrigued. Was her relationship with Yemo really more than ordinary? Otherwise, why would their interests be so similar? "I've already cooked some food. How about you eat here as well?" Sue had prepared food and said to Ning Qingxue, who was still doing gardening. "Thank you, I'm not very hungry," Ning Qingxue replied. But suddenly, after thinking for a while, she asked, "Sue, did Yemo eat with you frequently?" "Yemo?" Sue didn't know why Ning Qingxue would ask this, but she still answered, "He only ate once with me and said that he was going to invite me out to eat. But now, he still hasn't invited me and left without a notice. By the way, Ning Qingxue, what's your relationship with Yemo?" Ning Qingxue could say another word. Yeah, what was her relationship with Yimo? They were no longer engaged since the marriage was a fake. She had no relationship with Yimo at all now, so what was she doing here? After a week, Su Wei astoundingly discovered that Ning Qingshue's lifestyle was shocking similar to Yimo's. They were both very shy and almost never went out. Furthermore, they had a similarity which was their love of growing flowers. Ning Qingxue often watched beside the flower pots, and when she did, it was usually the whole day and actually didn't feel bored. The only difference was when Yimo lived here before, there was basically no one who came, but after Ning Qingxue lived here, that Li Mumei came quite a few times, and even someone called Su Jingwen came. Su Jingwen's beauty also gave Su Wei a little shock. She didn't know why there were suddenly so many beautiful women coming. In a private mansion of the Song family in Beijing, the manager of external matters, Song Hai, was immersed in staring at a map. A few days ago, he received a report saying that a youth looking strikingly similar to Yimo went into the town of Fengtang and went on a bus leaving toward Qi City. However, according to the driver, that person got off before even reaching Qi City. The place he got off was approximately in the Guixiang mountain range. However, the trail was cut off here once again. What Song Hai was staring at right now was the map of the Guixiang mountain range. This place was full of forests and mountains. If Yimo was really hiding there, it would be quite troublesome to find him. Ring, ring. Song Hai's phone rang and broke his train of thought. Song Hai frowned. He had exhausted himself mentally recently trying to find Yimo, and a phone call at this time made him feel uncomfortable. What is it? Song Hai picked up the phone and asked impatiently. Master Hai, Ning Qingxue from the Ning family had come to Ning Hai and moved into Yimo's previous home. What do we do now? Master Hai, please enlighten us. The phone came from the people he sent to Ning Hai in order to watch out for Yimo. However, he didn't think that they would be surveilling Ning Qingxue instead of Yimo. Song Hai rubbed his head and replied after a while, keep an eye on her but don't make any move yet. If there still isn't any news in a few days, find a few hoodlums and take her away. Yes, Master Hai, a very straightforward voice responded. Song Hai put down the phone and sneered as he talked to himself. I won't touch the Ning family for now, but can I touch you, Ning Qingxue? You will see what happens next. Notes. 1. As a reminder, zhai means the habit of staying home constantly and not going out. You can find a similar term in a few Japanese novels, hikikomori. Chapter 67. Injury. Chapter 67. Injury. Ning Qingxue woke up later than Su Wei each day. But when Ning Qingxue woke up this morning to clean herself, she discovered that Su Wei didn't go to work, so she couldn't help but to ask, Su Wei, you're not working today? Today's a rest day. Qingxue, don't you get bored looking at those flowers all day long? Due to having the experience of living together for a week, Su Wei and Ning Qingxue gradually got to know each other. So Su Wei wasn't as cold as she had been at the start. Ning Qingxue shook her head. Nope, I feel great looking at them growing each day. Su Wei was amazed for a moment as she really couldn't understand Ning Qingxue's actions, since even when Yimo was growing these flowers, he wasn't as much into this as her. At most, he spent some time of the day to look after it, and the rest of the time, he spent it on other things. Su Wei, who was just about to say something, was frightened by the door that was suddenly bumped open and dropped the tub in her hands. Two ferocious-looking men charged in but were surprised to see the frightened Su Wei, as they didn't expect that the person living with Ning Qingxue didn't go to work that day. However, their surprise was gone in a flash, and they didn't look at her anymore. B***tch, you deceived us and stole my money, and now you're hiding here. Come, go back with me. One man was going to pull Ning Qingxue, who wanted to dodge, but she didn't expect this man to take out a wooden stick with the intent to swing it toward a flower pot. Meanwhile, he was still yelling, How dare you stole my money and hide here to grow flowers? I'm going to smash all of them. No. Ning Qingxue saw the stick was about to hit one of the flower pots, and with that strike, even a metal flower pot would be shattered. She was so scared that she didn't even think before she just put herself in front of the flower pots. Puff! The stick directly hit on Ning Qingxue's unprotected back. Spew! Ning Qingxue spewed out a mouthful of blood on the flower pots and fainted immediately. Su Wei screamed and immediately tried to call the police. The two men didn't think that this would happen. They swung using their full strength with the intent to destroy a flower pot. So the consequences would be different when that stick hit on a woman. His orders were to simply take away this woman. But they didn't think that this woman would block a stick from him for a flower pot. The men saw that things went out of control, so they immediately looked at each other and left in a rush. Even when the police, Li Mumei, and Su Jingwen all came, Ning Qingxue still didn't wake up. Fractured spinal bone, 60% of the ribs broken, heavy damage to the heart and lungs. Even if we do everything we can, she would only have 3 years to live at best, and she would be sleeping on a bed most of the time. If we don't treat her, she barely has a month to live. This was the conclusion drawn by the specialists in Ning Hai's best hospital. Even if I go bankrupt, I will make the perpetrator pay. Ning Zhongfei was furious. Ning Qingxue was his only daughter, and for her, he was even willing to break out with his father and his brothers. But now, his daughter was beaten to the ground. A 30 or so year old looking woman just held Ning Qingxue's hand and cried. She was Ning Qingxue's mother, Lan Yu. Qingxue, I won't let you be in this state without doing nothing. After crying for a while, Lan Yu stood up and rubbed her red eyes. She looked at her husband and said, I will find Su Su and help Qingxue exact revenge. Even if the Song family was more powerful than the heavens, I wouldn't let this pass. Previously, every time his wife had talked about Su Su, Ning Zhongfei would try to persuade her saying that Su Su was in the hidden power factions, and it wasn't suitable for her to come out. However, this time, Ning Zhongfei surprisingly didn't say anything. He just nodded with a stern face and said, no matter the costs, we can't let Qingxue be treated like this. Mom! Ning Qingxue opened her eyes for the first time, but as she saw that she was laying in a white room, she felt a heart-wrenching pain. Qingxue, you're awake. Lan Yu hurried over and grabbed her daughter's hand. I'm hurting so much, Ning Qingxue spoke, and sweat immediately cascaded down her face. Lan Yin felt pain in her heart as she knew that her daughter was suffering, not just physically, but inside her heart too. At this moment, she was hoping to be the one laying on the bed instead of her daughter. However, she could only console her. Qingxue, don't be afraid. Mom will cure you. Ning Qingxue shook her head with a struggle. I want to go home. Mom, take me to that yard. I know myself. I don't want treatment. Ning Qingxue was clear in her heart. With her injuries, even if she was cured, she would be laying on a bed for the rest of her life, in the best-case scenario. She harbored the will to die and didn't want to stay in the hospital. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to see Emo once before she died and apologize in front of his face. Qingxue, don't be impulsive. Listen to your mom. Stay in the hospital. The doctors will definitely treat you. Rest assured, Mom will stay here with you. How could Lan Yu not know what her daughter was thinking? Her heart felt like it was getting sliced. Ning Qingxue wanted to shake her head, but she felt a sudden immense pain. However, she bit her teeth and said, Mom, can't you let me die with no regrets? I just want to return to that house. Take me back. I'm begging you. She breathed and said, Mom, give me that little case. After she said that, Ning Qingxue closed her eyes. Her pain no longer allowed her to continue talking, and she fainted once again. Lan Yu stood up and wiped the tears from her eyes. Zhongfei, why does Qingxue want to live in that house ever since she came back? What exactly happened between her and Yemo? Ning Zhongfei shook his head and said after a while, this is our daughter's last wish, and since we can't save her completely in the hospital, we should send her back to that house. We'll do everything we can to find the best doctors in the meanwhile. As long as there's even a sliver of hope, I don't want to give up. Put that case beside her bed so she won't miss it when she wakes up. Lan Yu nodded and agreed with her husband's opinion. Yemo didn't go straight to Luotsong like Qi Wanqing had recommended. He wanted to see if he could find a job himself. If he really couldn't, then he would go work at Qi Wanqing's cousin's company. However, before this, he had to go to Ning Hai and take away some soil from the flower pot in that house and take away his medical case. The reason he wanted to take some soil was for analysis. He wanted to find a laboratory and ask them to analyze the compound of the earth to understand as to why it could let the silver heart grass grow but not with the soil and flowing snake. Returning to Ning Hai, Yimo estimated that at this time, Sue was probably still at work, so he sneaked into the house. But when Yimo walked beside the flower pots, there was a heart-wrenching blood stain. Although it was almost dry, it was obvious that it didn't happen long ago. Why was there so much blood on this flower pot? Chapter 68. Yimo's Return. Chapter 68. Yimo's Return. Yimo, you're back. A voice interrupted Yimo's concentration. He was stunned, looking at the blood stain, and didn't notice that Sue had come in. Sue, don't you have to work today? Yimo looked strangely at Sue. She was looking tired as she simply shook her head. Yesterday afternoon, Qingxue was injured and was sent to the hospital. Right now she is still in a critical condition. I just went there to see her. How come I didn't see you? Yimo was astonished. Ning Qingxue was attacked? How did Sue know that Ning Qingxue was attacked? Wondering about this, he asked, how do you know Ning Qingxue was attacked? You don't know? Sue looked at Yimo and asked intriguingly. She thought Yimo came back because Ning Qingxue was hurt, but didn't expect him not to know anything at all. Yimo asked with a strange voice, if she was hurt, how would I know? Are her injuries serious? Although he didn't really have a good impression of Ning Qingxue, she looked really similar to his master, Luoyin, when she was melancholic. Thus, he still cared a bit about her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have agreed to Ning Qingxue's request previously. Qingxue had always been living here. You tell me how I wouldn't know. Sue was certain that Yimo really didn't know that Ning Qingxue had been injured. Yimo frowned. Ning Qingxue had been living here? He had already left, so the act was over. Why would she still be living here? With her family's situation, how could she not have another place to live? Seeing that Yimo was lost in his thoughts, Sue spoke once again. After Qingxue had come, she had been living in your room and rarely went out. Every day, she would care for these flowers and sometimes, she would look at them from day to night. Ning Qingxue also liked flowers? Yimo looked at the flower pots in bewilderment. He liked flowers because he came here to grow the silver heartgrass. Why would Ning Qingxue like to grow flowers? If she really liked it, why didn't he even see her come close to a flower pot for the 20 or so days he had been living with her? On the flower pot, one grass with some blood stain caught Yimo's attention. Although this grass just started to germinate, Yimo had already recognized that this was a silver heartgrass, and the moment he saw the plant, Yimo was immediately excited. The earth here could not only grow the silver heartgrass, but also make it germinate. Yimo immediately thought about why Ning Qingxue would grow this plant here. Was she a cultivator? But Yimo quickly realized that this newly germinated silver heartgrass was actually from a seed that he had dropped before he collected the seeds. He didn't expect it to germinate. But how did Ning Qingxue know this was silver heartgrass and took it so seriously? Yimo was still musing when Sue explained. Ning Qingxue seemed to really care about that small blade of grass in that flower pot and even used things to cover it. She looked after it every day and sometimes, she would look at it the whole day and wouldn't get bored. Yesterday, she was still looking at the small grass in the flower pot when two men suddenly charged in from outside. They looked very ferocious. Looking at Yimo, who was still quietly listening to her, Sue continued. One man said that Qingxue stole his money and was hiding here growing flowers. That man took a wooden stick and was about to smash the flower from the pot. However, I really don't know what Ning Qingxue was thinking at the time, but she used her body to block that wooden stick, and that stick directly hit her on the back. At that moment, she immediately spewed out a mouthful of blood on the flower pot and fainted. Yimo's face turned purple. He didn't know why Ning Qingxue would care so much for that silver heartgrass, but he was already furious. Did you find out who those men were? Yimo calmed down and asked. Sue shook her head and said, No, but Yimo, you need to be careful. After you had left, a lot of people came and asked about you. They even took the surveillance computer away. I don't think those are good people. You need to be careful when you come and go. When Sue spoke till now, Yimo was very clear. Those people that tried to take Qingxue away were definitely sent by the Song family to monitor him. Since they hadn't expected Ning Qingxue to move over, they wanted to see if he would come and meet up with her. However, after waiting for some time for him to no avail, they decided to take Ning Qingxue away. Then, the incident of Ning Qingxue being hurt while trying to protect the grass occurred. Yemo was sure that the truth shouldn't be far off, but he was already sure that those who had hurt Ning Qingxue were people of the Song family. The only thing he didn't understand was why she would risk her life to save this silver heart grass. The only explanation he could think of was that Ning Qingxue knew that he needed this grass, so she cared for it and would even protect it at all costs. Although this was the easiest explanation he could think of, Yemo still believed this didn't make any sense at all because Ning Qingxue had never been so nice to him, so she should be even less for some grass he might need. Yemo thought to himself, Song family, since you want to fight, then we'll fight. If I, Yemo, fear a mere Song family, then I wouldn't even need to cultivate. I might as well suicide and enter samsara. 1. Regardless of whether Ning Qingxue did it for him or not. Since she saved the silver heart grass, this incident was related to Yemo, so he should exact her revenge. Suwei, I will visit Qingxue in the hospital, but don't tell her that I came here. Yemo bid Suwei farewell and headed straight for the hospital. Although Suwei didn't know why Yemo wouldn't let her say anything to Ning Qingxue, she still agreed to his request because she knew that Ning Qingxue didn't have much time left. Just when Yemo walked in front of the hospital, he saw a few doctors carrying Ning Qingxue from a portable bed to a car. Yemo was stunned and wondered if was she changing hospital. However, his spirit sense scanned Qingxue's situation and immediately found out that her injuries were far more serious than he had imagined. Instantly, a killing intent rose up in Yemo's heart. Ning Qingxue was beaten like this in his place, trying to protect the silver heart grass. He was not going to let the perpetrator go. Ning Qingxue was carrying a case in her hands, which was the medical case he had wanted to take away. However, Yemo was astonished. Using his spirit sense to scan the case, he found 3 of the beads from the bracelet he had made for Su Jingwen. Why was this in Ning Qingxue's hands? And why were there only 3? He sighed to himself. If Ning Qingxue had these 3 beads on her wrist and not in the case, perhaps she would have been able to avoid the disaster. Yemo was just planning to secretly follow behind this ambulance, and just when the car left, he heard 2 nurses talking. This girl should be someone from a big family. Look, even the hospital director is running around. Yeah, I heard that she only has a month to live. This girl doesn't want to accept treatment and wants to go home. Although I can't understand, there didn't seem to be much difference living on the bed unable to move for a month or for a few years. Notes. 1. Samsara is a Sanskrit word that means wandering or world, with the connotation of cyclic, circuitous change. It also refers to the theory of rebirth and cyclicality of all life, matter, existence, a fundamental assumption of all Indian religions. Samsara is sometimes referred to with terms or phrases such as transmigration, karmic cycle, reincarnation, and cycle of aimless drifting, wandering, or mundane existence. Source: Wikipedia. Chapter 69. Chi Master 1. Chapter 69. Chi Master 1. Yemo now understood that Ning Qingxue was the one that wanted to go back, which made him wonder why she would choose something like that. However, since Ning Qingxue was going back home, he was no longer in a hurry. When there were no one left during the night, he would sneak inside and help her once again by curing her injuries. As for whether he would take away that piece of silver heart grass, he still needed to think about it. Since he already knew that the ambulance was going to send Ning Qingxue back, Yemo didn't follow it. Instead, he was wondering where he could find the people who made her on the verge of death. Although he knew it was definitely the Song family, Yemo didn't know where the Song family's current base was in Ninghai. Yemo found a clean restaurant and ate there. After the meal, just when Yemo walked out of the restaurant, he saw 3 people leave a star-rated restaurant, 2 men and 1 lady, and Yemo quickly recognized one of the men, Wang Peng. However, Yemo didn't care about Wang Peng at all. What interested him was the man beside him. He was around 40 years old. He had a medium build and a long face with a grass patch haircut and slightly bulging temples. Yemo could tell with one glance that this was a master. That man seemed to have sensed Yemo observing him. He actually raised his head and looked toward Yemo, who glanced away with the thought that this man was really powerful. He was sure that this man was even stronger than Wendong, and even if he might not be as strong as Yemo himself, he wasn't far off. This was Yemo's first time encountering such master, and immediately understood that it had been that man who cured Wang Peng's hand. Now, his spirit sense could scan up to an 8-meter radius around him, which was perfect for him as he wanted to know what these people were saying. Finally, Yemo stopped at a news agency not far away from where he could perfectly monitor those people without being caught out. I was really lucky to have Brother Hu last time. Otherwise, my hand still wouldn't be able to move now. I really feel ashamed to be unable to properly thank you this time for coming to help me. A voice that seemed to be Wang Peng's could be heard. Yemo had now the confirmation that this man really did cure Wang Peng's hand, which meant that this man was a Qi master, and it was his first encounter with a Qi master on Earth. Even when Dong, that he had met the last time, was only strong in brawling and assassination techniques, but she was far from being able to cultivate Qi. The middle-aged man waved his hand and said, "You are too polite, young Master Peng. Your father is also on young Master Tan's side, so this little gesture of help is nothing. However, just try not to go mess with those people selling fake medicine on the streets. There are some quite able men amongst them." Yes, I will remember Brother Hu's teachings. I have to trouble Brother Hu to say hello to young Master Tan for my father, as it's a bit inconvenient for me to go over right now. Anyway, thank you, Brother Hu. Wang Peng's tone was very respectful. The middle-aged man waved his hand and entered the Audi. The car was started and left rapidly. Yemo didn't have the time to care about Wang Peng. He focused exclusively on this man that Wang Peng called Brother Hu. This was a master. Immediately, Yemo followed the car. After 20 minutes, the sky had already darkened, and the Audi finally reached a private mansion. Yemo scanned the mansion with his spirit sense and found cameras everywhere, but absolutely no way of getting in. After thinking for a while, Yemo still decided to come back during the night when he would be able to destroy all these cameras and find that Brother Hu more easily. The reason he wanted to find this man was that Yemo had no idea about the martial arts system here, and wasn't sure to what state he had to cultivate to ensure his own safety. Even if he had to forcefully interrogate him, he would do so as to not be unprepared when he met a stronger master one day. Unfortunately, this time wasn't the most suitable as the sky was just beginning to turn dark. It was still early now, and he definitely had to help cure Ning Qingshue's wounds. It was just that it wasn't convenient now since there would definitely be someone beside her. It wouldn't be appropriate for him to go. However, when it was later in the night, he would go treat her and then return here. He wanted to go visit Shi Xiu at the Ninghai University, but after some thoughts, he gave up the idea. He was still weak now, and if the Song family somehow find out that he was related to Shi Xiu, they might try to harm him too. Yemo left Brother Hu's mansion and was preparing to go buy some things as he still had some money on him now. After he had finished treating Ning Qingshuo, he decided that he would go to Luotsong and have a look. If possible, he would find a job there, but if things still wouldn't work out, he would go to Qi Wanqing's cousin's company. His idea was to find a place to rent, and once things were more stable, he would get the content of the soil to be analyzed and then plant a few seeds of the silver heartgrass. After all, its growth period was very long. During this time, he also intended to go to the Taklamakan Desert. He didn't want to wait until the silver heartgrass was mature before leaving. That was wasting too much time. On this earth scarce of spirit Qi, he really wouldn't know when he would be able to cultivate to a degree he wanted if he wasted time like that. Although it wasn't foreseeable how strong he would get if he continued like this, there was still hope if he tried, and if he didn't, there would be nothing but regret. Although Ning Qingshuo also managed to grow a silver heartgrass, she was able to give up her life for that barely germinated blade of grass, and even though Yemo didn't know why she would do something like that, he couldn't bear to think about it any further. It's really you. I finally found you. A voice broke Yemo's contemplation. Yemo turned around and found someone that he knew. That person seemed to be called Feng Weicheng, and he met him last time when he was practicing his martial arts in the Qingdu Lake Park. At that time, he had wanted to spar with Yemo but was defeated in only one move. "Oh, it's you, Feng Weicheng." Yemo nodded. Feng Weicheng was quite straightforward. Feng Weicheng saw that Yemo still remembered his name and immediately said in happy surprise, "I didn't think you would still remember me." After that day, I had been waiting for you at the Qingdu Lake Park, but I never had been able to see you again. It's really lucky for me to see you here. Yi Mo smiled and said, "You need something from me?" Fang Weiqing rubbed his hands nervously. He knew that Yi Mo was quite strong. Even a few of him combined would be no match for Yi Mo. I was wondering if you had time for a chat. Fang Weiqing seemed very hopeful. Yi Mo thought that he still had some time now and didn't have a place to waste it on. Since Fang Weiqing had something, he might as well go see it. Therefore, Yi Mo nodded and said, "Fine." Seeing that Yi Mo agreed, Fang Wei was elated. He hurriedly brought Yi Mo to a quiet Western restaurant. He didn't even ask if Yi Mo had been here and just ordered a few dishes. Although he hadn't eaten Western cuisine before, Yi Mo felt it was quite good. After eating a few mouthfuls, Yi Mo asked casually, "What's up?" If Fang Weiqing was going to ask him to become his master, then Yi Mo would refuse it without a second thought. He didn't have the time to be teaching disciples. Fang Weiqing saluted with his fists and said, "I haven't asked for your honorable name yet. I'm called Serene." Yi Mo didn't want to reveal his real name in Ninghai. Besides, calling himself Serene had a few meanings. Firstly, it was that his master, or Shifu, was Luoying. Secondly, it was a homonym for seeing, which meant thinking of his master. Hearing Yi Mo's name, Fang Weiqing was amazed for a moment, but soon recovered. In his opinion, this name was very feminine. However, of course, he wouldn't reveal his thoughts. He had come here today to ask Yi Mo for help. Notes: 1. Reminder: the qi cultivated in Yi Mo's previous world is the spirit qi, which is an energy from the surrounding environment and universe. It is a level higher than the qi which martial arts masters on Earth cultivated. To avoid any confusion, the qi which mortal martial arts masters cultivate is called qi instead of qi. Chapter 70. Arrogance. Chapter 70. Arrogance. Sure, senpai. Fang Weiqing couldn't find a proper greeting, so he could only refer to him that way. However, when he just spoke those words, he was interrupted by Yi Mo. "Brother Fang, just say my name. I'm not some senpai." Fang Weiqing saw that Yi Mo didn't mind, so he said, "In that case, I won't be too polite. Shering, I came to you asking for help this time. Because I haven't been able to find you before. I know that it is very impolite of me to say this the second time we meet." Yi Mo frowned and thought, "You still know this is impolite? Wasn't this obvious?" He and Fang Weiqing were strangers who met for the second time. If a stranger asks for help as soon as he opened his mouth, it would be strange if Yi Mo didn't frown. Seeing Yi Mo's reaction, Fang Weiqing didn't dare to drag it on and just said, "You know that I am a driver. Although my boss' son is only going to the university, he is generous, and his relationship with me is excellent. He is doing his 4th year at the Ning High Technology University and is also the president of the Martial Arts Association. However, a month ago, he was heavily injured in a martial arts spar and is still in the hospital now." Yi Mo stopped Fang Weiqing's words and said, "Do you want me to avenge him?" Fang Weiqing nodded and just wanted to say something but was interrupted by Yi Mo again. "I won't do such a pointless thing. This thing ends now. Don't bring it up again." Fang Weiqing opened his bitter mouth and hesitated before saying, "Brother Ing, let me explain to you first, and if you still aren't interested, I won't dare to ask again." Fang Weiqing changed his reference of Yi Mo from Shi Ing to Brother Ing in a hurry. Yi Mo nodded helplessly. "Fine, but be quick. I'm busy tonight. It's because my boss is also from the military that his son loves martial arts. However, a month ago, a few Han men started a taekwondo gym next to the university. In fact, there are a lot of taekwondo clubs in Ninghai, which is normal. However, as soon as these Hans started the Han-style taekwondo club, they wrote 2 sentences on their door: every martial arts originated in Han, and among all of them, taekwondo is number 1. Those who enter this club must accept that the Chinese martial arts originated from Han, and only those who admit that could come into the club to study. Originally, everyone thought that no one would join this club simply because of that rule. However, we didn't expect so many people to sign up. I really couldn't get it through my head, and neither could Qi Weidong. So, he went to spar with the people from this Han-style taekwondo club. After saying that, Fang Weiqing sighed. Although he didn't continue speaking, Yi Mo could guess what happened next. This Qi Weidong was probably the son of Fang Weiqing's boss. In fact, Yimo also didn't really like some of the Hans he had met because they were too shameless. Not only did they call Chinese medicine Han medicine, but they had even said that Zhuge came from Han. This wasn't all. As long as it was a traditional Chinese festival, they would all claim it to be Han. After Fang Weicheng had made another sigh, he said, seeing Qi Weidong willing to challenge the club master, he was actually very welcoming and also made him sign some kind of agreement that they wouldn't be held responsible for any injuries. I know Qi Weidong's skills. He started practicing martial arts since he was 8, and it has been more than 10 years since, but he still was no match for the vice club master of the club and was heavily beaten. However, due to the prior agreement and the fair nature of the match, there was no way to reproach anything to them. Due to Qi Weidong's injuries, many masters in Ninghai went to challenge them, but all of them came back heavily injured. That Han was indeed strong, and it's been a month, yet no one in Ninghai was a match for that man. Later on, they even set the challenge at each university to increase their influence. In this way, their Han-style Taekwondo club not only didn't close but was instead getting more and more popular, and those signing up increased significantly. I really don't know what these fellow Chinese are thinking. Fang Weicheng seemed furious after he had spoken. Yimo smiled faintly in the meanwhile. He had heard once that the Chinese had tried to reject the Japanese imports for a certain number of years already, but there were still so many people buying Japanese products, still giving them money so they could turn it into bombs and throw it back. Although the current world still waged war, it was only partial war, and those young men and women living in the peaceful era wouldn't be able to think of more deeply about those kinds of things. Their emotions for their country were mostly in their mouths and not in their hearts. They would forget it after speaking. Compared to the older generation that had experienced war, they were missing a lot of things. Usually, when they bought things, they only cared if the brand was famous or if the appearance was good, and as for where it came from, rarely anyone bothered to check. This wasn't to say that they didn't love their country, but more like they didn't have that subtle notion in mind. Of course, Yimo was able to empathize with Fang Weicheng's emotions. He wasn't an angry youth, but someone saying that everything belonged to them made him feel uncomfortable. Yimo was also a Chinese now and knew that they had a long history. He believed that the Han's Taekwondo originated from Chinese martial arts, yet now, they were saying the opposite. Since he was able to help out, Yimo asked, "Brother Fang, what time is it now?" Fang Weicheng looked at his watch and answered, 7:30. Yimo nodded. "I still have 3.5 hours. If you can arrange a match within this time, I should be able to help you with this." Fang Weicheng stood up excitedly. "Brother Ing, I can definitely do that. Right now, they are hoping that someone would fight with them. And now, they would hold the competition with lots of promotions at every university to raise their fame." Afterward, Fang Weicheng immediately picked up the phone and started to make a call. Ning High Technology University. A gym that could only contain 3,000 people was filled with more than 4,000 people now, and the lights were on inside because right now, there was a match in progress. One was the president of the Ning High University Martial Arts Association, Li Bangqi, and the other one was the Han-style Taekwondo Club's vice club master, Pu Dongheng. The reason the vice club master was the challenger was because one had to beat him first before the club master came himself. However, since the establishment of the Han-style Taekwondo Club a month before, no one had been able to beat Pu Dongheng in a match. Many challengers either broke their arms or legs. Even though Li Bangqi was only the president of one martial arts association in Ninghai University, he had represented Ninghai in participating in the National Youth Martial Arts Competition and won the 3rd prize. So this time, the match between the two of them almost attracted the attention of all the university students of Ninghai. However, this gymnasium was too small and couldn't hold more people. Most people stood outside watching on a big screen that was prepared for the event. The match between Li Bangqi and Pu Dongheng didn't involve rounds, but just free fighting. Except for the prohibition of weapons, they could use any means they wanted. Almost everyone was cheering for Li Bangqi. Although the two were in a heated battle, no one had the advantage yet, but everyone knew that the deciding moment was about to come. Because every time Pu Dongheng fought with someone, he would suddenly defeat his opponent around 20 minutes, and now, it was almost 20 minutes. Li Bangqi originally thought that even though a mere Han had beaten many masters in Ninghai, he was still a Han. So Li Bangqi didn't take him seriously. However, after they had started fighting, he realized that Pu Dongheng was not only agile but also experienced in Chinese martial arts. The most despicable part was that these Hans claimed it as theirs. The more Li Bangxi fought, the more he became alerted. He had already taken a few punches from Pu Dongheng, and even though he had a strong body and it didn't really matter much for the moment, he was the only one to know that he only landed one kick on Pu Dongheng, causing barely any damage to him. Chapter 71. What is truly crazy? Chapter 71. What is truly crazy? The reason Li Bangxi was so shocked was because his master had once told him that the highest power level in martial arts was the heaven state. Although he had practiced martial arts for more than 10 years, he didn't even reach the lowest level, the yellow state. At most, he was on the borderline of high-level martial arts. However, those who reached the legendary heaven state were very rare. Perhaps no one had even seen one. Even his master was barely in the doorsteps of the yellow state, but unable to progress any further. Real martial arts masters came from ancient martial arts families and some hidden power factions. However, these ancient martial arts families usually never showed themselves to the world and only pursued martial arts to its extremity, so normal people could rarely see them. If one day, someone could block his Hurricane Storm Fist, then it meant that this person was on the borderline of the yellow state, and he definitely wouldn't be a match for him. However, right now, Li Bangxi's Hurricane Storm Fist had been completed, yet his opponent was still standing firmly. Li Bangxi immediately remembered his master's words. He knew things weren't good and was about to go into a defensive stance. But at this moment, Pu Dongheng seemed to have suddenly turned into two people, and taking advantage of that one moment when Li Bangxi was hesitating, Pu Dongheng had landed a kick on Li Bangxi's chest. The pain of breaking ribs made Li Bangxi forget for a second the fact that he had been kicked out of the ring. However, he immediately recovered his mind as he had realized that he had lost and was beaten by the vice club master. The club master didn't even need to show his face. At this moment, he no longer cared about the pain of his broken ribs, and the only thing in his mind was the humiliation he received. The Hans stole the arts of his ancestors and used it to beat him. The boisterous gymnasium suddenly went into a deadly silence. Li Bangxi represented the highest level of martial arts in Ninghai, but he couldn't even beat a vice club master. How embarrassed were the few thousand people at the scene. The reason Li Bangxi made his move today was because he had just come back from Beijing the day before, and yet he hadn't expected to suffer a loss as soon as he arrived. The vice president of the Ninghai Martial Arts Association, who was also the chairman of the Ninghai Technology University's Student Association, Chen Weilin, said with a face full of disappointment, "Quickly take Bangxi to the hospital. We surrender this match." There were sighing everywhere in the gymnasium, and many people started to leave in disappointment. Suddenly, Chen Weilin's phone rang and, as he picked up the call, he had only heard one sentence before exclaiming, "What? You found him?" "Okay, leave this to me, Club Master Pu. We still have one more member of our martial arts association who wants to challenge you today. This is the last challenge, and if we still can't beat you this time, I will represent the Ninghai Martial Arts Association not to challenge you ever again." Chen Weilin's words immediately caught everyone's attention. Not challenging them again meant accepting their status, and everyone thought that Chen Weilin was mad. "Ha ha ha ha, you're welcome to send more contestants. Our Han martial arts masters aren't afraid of challenges. On the contrary, we worry that there are no more challenges, and I was starting to wonder why there was only one every few days." Pu Dongheng laughed cockily. He wanted more challenges since the more there were, the more famous his Han-style Taekwondo club would become. What? There's still someone challenging him? Stay to support him. We must beat these Hans until they know what true Chinese martial arts is. Yes, we must stay to support our people. If you want to stay, you can stay. I'm sick of the disappointment. I'm leaving. Yeah, leave. Why stay and cheer for the Hans? With the heated discussions, half of the people left, and the tightly squeezed place was quickly becoming more spacious. However, some of those who were watching the match outside heard that there was another challenger incoming and decided to stay. Soon, new people squeezed into the gymnasium, and the place that was just becoming empty became full again. What sort of person is it? Does he want to challenge the Han? But even if he loses, I will still support him. At least he isn't a coward. Yes, of course, we support him. Unlike some people, they lose their vigor after seeing a loss, so no wonder the Hans are so cocky. I heard it was because Chun Weilin received a last-minute call and arranged the match. However, the Hans definitely want more people to challenge them. This way, they would become more famous. Famous? I don't think so. The challenge hasn't started yet. How would the Hans know they would win? When Yemo came to the Ning High Technology University, he didn't think that there would be so many people at the scene. It could even be described as a sea of people. Despite that Yemo was a cultivator who was originally from another world and preferred peace, he still resonated under the fervor of these hot-blooded students and Ning High citizens. What he didn't know was that this was only the scene after half of the people had already left. Yemo followed Fong Weichen into the passage and entered from the back. No one came up and said anything because he looked too ordinary, so ordinary that he didn't look any different from an ordinary, quiet student. Brother Fong, did you find that master? Did he come? Where is he? Chun Weilin saw Fong Weicheng and immediately asked a few questions. That's him, Shi Ying. A master of the martial arts realm, Fong Weicheng pointed at Yemo and said, "Huh." Chun Weilin was so surprised that he was startled. How could it be such a quiet-looking youth? However, he immediately reacted and saw that his actions were very impolite. He hurriedly extended his hand and said, "Master Shi, hello, I'm Chun Weilin, the vice president of the Ning High Martial Arts Association. It's a pleasure to meet you, but that Pu Dongheng is rather strong. How about I show you some of his recorded matches first?" Yemo waved his hand and said, "I'm tight on time. There's no need for recordings. The faster, the better." Chun Weilin opened his mouth and thought, wow, he is really arrogant, too arrogant. Everyone who fought Pu Dongheng all analyzed his fights repeatedly. Even so, no one had been able to hold out for more than 20 minutes against him. Who is this Shi Ying? Did Weicheng get things wrong? What if he just went up and got thrown down in one round? It was a small thing if he got hurt, but then the face of the Ning High Martial Arts Association would be completely lost. Thinking about this, Chun Weilin looked at Fong Weicheng and wanted to know what Fong Weicheng would say. Seeing Chun Weilin look at him, Fong Weicheng waved his hand and said, "President Chun, just do as what Shi Ying requires. His time is really tight. It would be best if we could call the club master and the vice one here to fight him as well. I believe after this match, the Han-style Taekwondo club would go back to where it came from." Fong Weicheng was quite admiring of Yemo's strength as he didn't believe the club master could kick him out in less than one round like this Shi Ying had done so easily in the past. Seeing that Fong Weicheng said this, Chun Weilin couldn't say anything anymore and just looked at Yemo before turning around to make the arrangements. "Wait." Yemo stopped Chun Weilin. "Is there anything else? I will do as you wish." Chun Weilin had not much faith in Yemo, but after all, he was brought by Fong Weicheng, so he would comply. "Go tell them that if they want to fight me, they better get everyone from their club and fight me together. I don't want to waste time. And tell me where that Pu Dongheng likes to break people's bones," Yemo said to Chun Weilin. "What?" Chun Weilin was truly dumbfounded now. Before he had thought that Shi Ying was very arrogant for not watching the recordings, but now, he knew that he was truly crazy. Chapter 72. Descent of the Crows, but... Chapter 72. Descent of the Crows, but what? Although Pu Dongheng could speak fluent Chinese, he was so angry that his accent changed after hearing Chun Weilin's request. He had been challenged for a month, and no one in Ninghai was a match for him. But now, someone wanted to challenge everyone in their club at the same time. Pu Dongheng's face turned purple as he said, "Okay, but he must beat me first. Perhaps after he had fought me, he wouldn't say such things. I'm sorry, President Chen. I want to ask you to tell him that there will be injuries in the fight. Don't regret after he goes in the hospital. Although our club welcomes challengers, not every little prawn can come and challenge us. Now, if he still wants to fight, then hurry up." After speaking, he sat down and meditated, ignoring Chun Weilin. "What? The challenger tonight wants to challenge the entire club. Is this real? What a boss. Who is this? Even if he loses, I will still support him." The people at the scene erupted upon hearing this news that had spread like wildfire across the scene as it had immediately excited those supporters with only one thin line of hope. Although they knew this was impossible, it still ignited their fervor. There was no stopping it. Yemo didn't have to wait long until Chinwailin came back with someone following behind him. That person had an agreement in his hand and made Yemo sign and press his fingerprint on it. After that person had left, Chinwailin said, "That Han said that you would earn the right to talk about fighting his entire club only after beating him. Right now, he is waiting for you on the stage." The boisterous scene immediately quietened down after Yemo came in. Originally, they thought that a challenger who could be so cocky was at least very tall and big if not bulky. However, the quiet-looking Yemo was obviously a student. Many people could no longer allow their eyes to be tortured and left quietly, thinking that even if they were no match for them, they couldn't use such low ways of pestering them. At least Li Bongqi was nearly 1.9 tall, but this Shering was not only not bulky but also didn't look like a martial arts master no matter what. Pu Dongheng was also stunned. He really had some expectations for this arrogant Shering, but he had never thought that he would be so young. It could be said that out of all the people that had challenged him this month, this Shering was the most ordinary. "You are the one who arrogantly challenged our entire club?" Pu Dongheng pointed at Yemo and really couldn't get his head across. However, Yemo didn't answer and just said coldly, "If you want to fight, hurry up. I still have other business. I don't have time to play with you Martians." He could easily tell how strong Pu Dongheng was. Slightly stronger than Wendong, but if she was fighting with her life on the line, he might not even be a match for her. Compared to that brother who he was going to see that night, Pu Dongheng was a far cry. How could someone like this be called a master? Martian? Pu Dongheng repeated and soon realized that Yemo was ridiculing him for being ignorant, so he replied, "Soon I will let you know what regret is." Then, Pu Dongheng immediately went for a combo kick. Pu Dongheng believed that if he used this combo kick, Yemo definitely wouldn't be able to dodge it. He was going to kick Yemo up as soon as possible, and when he fell down, he would launch a round of attack. The cheering at the gymnasium immediately stopped. Most of the people at the scene had seen Pu Dongheng's matches. This was the first time he had used his combo kick as soon as the match started. The less brave girls didn't even dare to look at Yemo anymore and just closed their eyes instead. Yemo sneered. From the way Pu Dongheng moved, he could tell that he wouldn't be able to improve in his life at all. His movements were too reserved, and although Yemo didn't cultivate Chinese martial arts, he knew that someone who tried to kill his opponent on the first attack wouldn't be someone strong unless he was actually countless times stronger than his opponent. And this Pu Dongheng wanted to beat him senseless with one move? He thought too high of himself. Yemo didn't even move and just stared coldly at Pu Dongheng's combo kick. Oh no! Everyone who looked at Yemo sighed. He didn't even know how to dodge. This was too stupid. Chen Weilin must have gone mad from the losses and found someone like this to get beat up. Pu Dongheng's idea was good, and it seemed insurmountable to him. Perhaps this idea wasn't bad for those opponents he had faced before. Even if he couldn't succeed with this one, he still had other moves, and this wouldn't affect him at all. Unfortunately, he met Yemo. Yemo's first move was to reach out his hand and grab his ankle. The second move was to swing him up and then followed with 2 kicks on each of the kneecaps on Pu Dongheng's legs. Pu Dongheng didn't even get to scream when Yemo's third move, a few quick kicks, landed on his chest. The fourth move was the final kick that landed right on his nose. The last sentence that Pu Dongheng, who was shouting in excruciating pain, heard was, "I'll give you the descent of the crows, but move." After hearing this sentence, he felt that he was sitting inside a round barrel with countless garbage covering his face. After Yemo had walked off for a few seconds, the scene suddenly erupted into thunderous roars. He actually kicked a Han, who was so arrogant for a month, flying so easily. How dare you act cocky in China? Taekwondo? It was only something that our ancestors in the Tang dynasty passed into the Han lands. Now, how dare you proclaim that to be your own? Now, you encounter the attacks of our ancestors, and your butt has to turn around. The gymnasium was rumbling. There were countless calls going out or coming in. Quickly come, it's true, he really was beaten, and in one move, it was so fascinating. There should be more, later on, come quickly. but there are no longer seats here anymore. Ah ha ha, your fault for leaving. God, luckily I didn't listen to you. That was really a show. One move. What? How to describe that move? Just pretend it was Bruce Lee. Yeah, go regret. No time to talk to you. I need to go see my idol. No, I can't deal with it. I love Shering. I want to marry him. Stop drooling. Just look at you. Sigh. It's a bit hard. Meow Yuan. Do you want to die? What? He actually won? And in one move? What the hell? Why is my luck so bad? I've been watching it for a month, but I didn't get to see this. No, I must get there. It's too exhilarating. A young man who was eating fast food immediately hung up and quickly went out. Hey, you still haven't paid for your food yet. When the boss rushed out, there was no one left. Chapter 73. Famous. Chapter 73. Famous that Shering kind of looks like someone from my school. How is this possible? Immediately, a Ning Hai University student realized that Shering had similarities with Yimo, but obviously didn't dare to believe that thought. Who didn't know who Yimo was in Ning Hai University? How could he become Shering? Pfft. Keep dreaming. Your school? The strongest in your school, Li Bongqi, has already lost. The student who spoke before felt so as well. After all, there were too many similar-looking people, so he didn't say anything anymore. Master Shi, I didn't think you would be so strong. It was really right to invite you this time. It's almost like a dream. Chen Weilin was so excited that he didn't know what to say anymore. He didn't think that this Shering would be much stronger than what Fang Weicheng had proclaimed. That cocky Pu Dongheng was absolutely out of his league. Although Fang Weicheng was sure that Yimo would be eventually the victor, he didn't think he would win so cleanly. A tall girl ran in, and looking at Yimo, hopefulness glimmered across her eyes, but she still remained calm and said to Chen Weilin, President, some journalists want to interview Brother Shering. Of course, Chen Weilin also wanted journalists to interview him. For him, the more known this event was, the better, but he still needed to ask for Yimo's permission. Yimo heard the girl's words but waved his hand and said, There's no need for an interview. Hurry up and arrange for that club master to fight me. I don't have much time. Okay. Of course, your things are the top priority. I will arrange for it immediately. Yu Yashin, push the journalists away. Just say that Master Shering needs to rest. After finishing, Chen Weilin rushed out, but his footsteps were much lighter than before. Seeing that Chen Weilin went out, Yu Yashin suddenly took out a small notebook and pen. Walking fearfully toward Yimo, she asking in a small voice, Brother Shi, could you give me an autograph? Yimo smiled and said, Of course. Then, he took over the notebook, but as soon as he had written one character, he felt that something was wrong. He was used to writing Yimo, and actually wrote the first character to be. However, he just hesitated for a moment before finally writing down, Shering. Yu Yashin took the book with a blushed face saying thank you before rushing out. She still needed to tell the journalists that they couldn't do interviews, but her heart was still beating rapidly. Thinking about the admiration she would receive from her schoolmates in her dorm, she couldn't resist revealing a smile at the edge of her mouth. Why won't Mr. Shi be interviewed? The female journalist was very shocked upon hearing that Yimo rejected interviews. Although she was only one media body of Ning Hai, who didn't want to be famous now. There was a chance to be famous, but he didn't take it. Yu Yashin saw the journalist was a bit unhappy and hurriedly said, Master Shi might have another match. How about you ask President Chen later? I can't make this decision. Fine, I will go talk to your vice president, and if that still doesn't work, I will go straight to the president of the Ning Hai Martial Arts Association. This female journalist spoke angrily. She was very unhappy with the condescending attitude that the Ning Hai Technology University was adopting. Just when Yimo was getting impatient while waiting for his next opponent, Chen Weilin hurried in with a face full of excitement. How did it go? Fang Weicheng had been staying with Yimo. He knew that Yimo's time was short, so he asked Chen Weilin as soon as he came in. The Han surrendered. The Han-style Taekwondo club will leave tomorrow and won't use that title ever again. Chen Weilin said excitedly with a face full of pride and satisfaction. It was as though he had defeated Pu Dongheng himself. Fang Weicheng frowned and said, How could the Han surrender? Their clubmaster is really strong. I've seen him before. He is definitely much stronger than that Pu Dongheng. This shouldn't be. However, Chen Wailan replied, yes, they said it very clearly and even signed. That club master checked Pu Dongheng's wound and looked at the recording. Then, he immediately surrendered. However, he said that it was only temporary. He would fight Master Shi at the same place a year later. Yi Mo frowned. He didn't have time to fight them again a year later, but since they surrendered now, he couldn't fight them again today anyway. Seeing Yi Mo frown, Chen Wailan immediately said, I didn't agree with him, but he said that I didn't need to. He would come here a year later, and if Master Shering didn't come to fight him, he wouldn't blame you. He just said that if you didn't come, then it would be obvious who would win. They lost, and yet they are still so cocky. These Hans are really shameless. Fang Weicheng was angry. Yi Mo waved his hand and said, we can talk about these things a year later. I'm leaving now. He stood up and headed for the door. Seeing that Yi Mo was about to leave, Chen Wailan hurriedly said, Master Shering, today is a joyful day. How about I invite you to a dinner with us at the Ruwei Tower? Also, a few journalists are waiting outside for you. Yi Mo smiled and said, there's no need for that. I still have things to do anyway. I'll just leave using the window so there won't be any trouble with the journalists outside. He didn't even wait for their response. He opened the window and jumped out. Huh. Wait. This is the third floor. However, Chen Wailan had barely enough time to finish his sentence before Yi Mo had already disappeared from the window. Chen Wailan and Fang Weicheng rushed to the window, and yet, Yi Mo was nowhere to be seen. Although Yi Mo had left, this scene was actually more chaotic. People were celebrating, drinking champagne and beer everywhere, and the room was filled with happy shouts, simply because the Hans, who had been winning consecutively for a month, had admitted defeat. They could take what was yours in front of you, but making them admit defeat was extremely hard. At this time, Shi Ying's name had spread throughout the entire university and was spreading outside even quicker. Many people were starting to know that a great master called Shi Ying had appeared in Ninghai. The happiest people tonight were those who got to see with their own eyes the match between Yi Mo and Pu Dongheng. But the unhappiest were those journalists who waited for him for a long time and still didn't manage to see him. And then, there was the last group of people, the morose one. They were the ones who left at the last minute. Now, no words could describe their feeling. Regret was too light of a word to describe their feeling. It was as though a hardcore Chinese soccer fan was watching the World Cup between China versus Spain in the finals, and after 90 minutes, the score was 0-4 with China losing. Although the referee had called for 3 more minutes of overtime, because of the disappointment, a lot of soccer fans had left the stadium. Yet 3 minutes later, they learned outside of the stadium that China had scored 5 goals in 3 minutes and eventually pulled down Spain from the throne with a score of 5-4. But the last 3 minutes, they weren't there to see it. How depressing would that be? The time was already around 11 p.m., so Yi Mo quickly left the Ning High Technology University. What he wanted to do first was to treat Ning Qingxue, and at this time, the person staying with her should be already asleep. Chapter 74. Ning Qingshue's Last Words. Chapter 74. Ning Qingshue's last words. When Yi Mo came to the house, he found a 30 or so-year-old woman still sitting in front of Ning Qingshue's bed and looking quite similar to her. It was probably Ning Qingshue's mother. However, she looked really young, and if Ning Qingshue's incident didn't occur, she would perhaps look even younger. With Ning Qingshue's mother here, Yi Mo didn't know whether or not he should go in now. Just when Yi Mo was hesitating, the woman beside the bed spoke. Qingxue, you should let go of that case and sleep. Mom, you can go to sleep. I want to have some quiet time to myself. Although her voice was really soft, Yi Mo could still hear it with his spirit sense. The woman near the bedside and spoke after a while. The nurse and I will be outside. If there's anything that you need, just ring the bell. If you're in pain, tell Mom, and I'll get the nurse to come in and give you some anesthetics. Yi Mo looked at this woman as she walked out of the room and waited until she was outside to rub her eyes. This place had been transformed into a temporary medical place, and 2 young nurses were sleeping on the beds on the side. Yi Mo waited for a while, and when that woman sat on the bed, He went over quietly and pressed the chakra point of the three women inside the room to force them to sleep. He didn't want someone to suddenly charge in while he was treating Ning Qingxue. After doing all that, Yi Mo entered Ning Qingshue's room. He used to live in this room before and gave it to Ning Qingxue after she had come. As he entered, Yi Mo felt things were familiar yet unknown at the same time. He looked at Ning Qingxue, who was hugging the case, and knew that her injuries were very serious, even more than he had expected. He just couldn't understand why she constantly hugged his case. Yi Mo was still thinking whether he should tell Ning Qingxue that he was treating her, or make her sleep and then treat her when he heard Ning Qingshue's quiet murmuring. Then, he saw the red phone on her hands, and he immediately realized that she was recording a message on it. Yi Mo, I'm sorry, I will leave soon. I know that I hurt you, and I regret it so much. I really wanted to see you once before I passed away to apologize. After experiencing all that, I finally know how naive I was. I am. However, I finally realized how magnanimous you are, but it is already too late. Besides, the only thing I do not regret is blocking that grass. I only regret the way I treated you. After reading your letter, I understood how lonely you were. You never had friends, and yet I was still a nasty woman, hurting you again and again. I even used the money you earned from selling your blood to buy a few $1,000 bottle of wine. But I never thought about how you would feel. I just did what I wanted without thinking of the consequences. And when I finally understood things, it was already too late. Ning Qingxue coughed a few times as her face was getting paler, but she still moved her phone closer and continued. Yi Mo, I don't know if I love you, but if I still had the chance to be engaged with you, I definitely wouldn't do it because I needed you as a shield, but because I am willing to marry you. Perhaps it has nothing to do with love, and you might even say I'm not good enough for you. But I still keep the marriage certificate by my side. I never divorced and won't divorce in the future. You are my only husband in this lifetime. Regardless if you know it or not, regardless if you agree or not, I, Ning Qingxue, am willing to be your wife and am your wife. Yi Mo, I still have to apologize to you. I was your wife, but I never took on the responsibilities of a wife for a single day. Instead, I got you into so much more trouble. I was like an immature child, thinking that I knew everything. She paused for some time. Yi Mo, I will protect you from heaven. You need to stay well. It's a pity that I wasn't even able to leave a child for you. You must find a girl who loves you, not someone like me. Speaking till now, Ning Qingxue gasped for some air and caressed the case with her hands before saying once again, Yi Mo, I've never said the two words Lao Gong one in my life. I really want to say it, but I'm too embarrassed. There's a blade of grass in the yard. I took care of it every day because I've seen you do the same with the previous one. I don't know if it could be useful to you. If it is, then take it away when it matures. Perhaps that is the only thing I can leave to you. Yi Mo, Lao Gong, are you still well? Ning Qingshue's voice gradually got lower. Yi Mo suddenly felt sour and guilty in his heart. When he had helped Ning Qingxue before, he wasn't as magnanimous as Ning Qingxue thought him to be. He just thought that Ning Qingshue's gloomy face looked like his master Luoing, so he was willing to help her. He wanted his master to also have people helping her if she ever was in trouble. And the money from selling blood, he didn't go for her. Even if he had had more money than he could have spent, he would have still gone there. Wasting was bad, but Ning Qingxue thought that he was trying to make a living for her and still felt guilty about it. It could be seen that Ning Qingxue was a kind-hearted girl. It was just that the environment she lived in and her family background gave her a sense of aloofness that made her have a distaste toward strangers. However, if you peeled away the layer of her shield, she was a kind-hearted, yet pitiful person. However, she mixed up the feeling of love and guilt. Perhaps she would understand one day. Yi Mo sighed. This had further reinforced his decision of saving Ning Qingxue. However, he wouldn't tell her for now. After all, his abilities were too absurd. It would only scare her. Just when Yi Mo thought that Ning Qingxue was asleep and prepared to seal a few meridians on her to treat her, Ning Qingxue suddenly grabbed the phone and mumbled, Dad, Mom, I'm leaving. I've been a bad daughter. I already married to Yi Mo. That case is his marriage gift to me. Don't separate that case from me. There's a grass in the yard that I left for him. If he ever came back, give this phone to him, But if he never does? She paused for a long time. Then never mind. Sorry, I caused so much trouble for the family and just left. Ning Qingshue's voice suddenly dropped low. Just when Yimo was wondering if he should tell her that he was already here, Ning Qingxue suddenly grabbed a knife from the case and pierced it toward her throat. Yimo was shocked and couldn't care anymore as he dashed in front of Ning Qingxue. There was too much distance, and he didn't have time to grab the knife. He could only block with his arm in front of her throat. The knife pierced Yimo's hand and was blocked by Yimo's qi, rendering it unable to go any farther. However, Ning Qingxue fainted because she had used too much strength. Yimo pulled out the knife. Although it didn't pierce very deeply, there was still some blood. Yimo stopped his wound from bleeding, and seeing that Ning Qingxue had fainted, he raised his hand and sealed a few meridians, rendering her unable to wake up for some time. Afterward, he tried to take the case from her arms. However, he discovered that Ning Qingxue clutched the case tightly. Even when she had fainted, her hands still held the case firmly. Unless Yimo forced it out of her, he wouldn't be able to take it from her at all. Yimo helplessly shook his head and could only open the case in her hands. There were quite a few things inside. Yimo took out a bottle of pills and took out that packet of silver needles. He stuffed 2 heart protection pills into Ning Qingshue's mouth and, using his qi, he helped her body digest it. Afterward, he took up the 108 silver needles, sterilizing them with his qi, and flipped Ning Qingxue as he took off her top. Note: 1. Lao Gong is how the wives call their husbands. Chapter 75. Treatment. Chapter 75. Treatment. With Ning Qingxue being such a beautiful girl, although Yimo had never seen her back, he could still imagine how white it would be. However, when he finally saw her back, it was almost fully dark purple, showing how hard she had been hit that day. Seeing the wound on Ning Qingshue's back, Yimo's killing intent rose once again. Song family, I won't let this go. Yimo unbuckled Ning Qingshue's bras, and the 108 silver needles in his hands quickly fell onto Ning Qingshue's back. At the same time, his 2 hands kept massaging Ning Qingshue's body. As his cultivated qi gradually permeated into Ning Qingshue's body through his hand, her broken meridians, organs, and backbone began to slowly recover. Luckily, Yimo had left some medical pills here. Otherwise, it would be very hard to heal her in only one night with her wounds. As Ning Qingshue's tattered body was gradually recovering by Yimo's qi, Yimo's face was becoming paler. Initially, he had thought that he would have been able to treat Ning Qingshue's injuries in at most a little over an hour. But now, it had already been 2 hours, and he only finished half. Pea-sized sweat dripped on Ning Qingshue's back, but Yimo didn't dare to stop because if he did, not only his previous work would have been for nothing, but it would be even harder for him to help her later on. If only he had a spirit stone or a spiritual recovery pill, even of the lowest grade. Yimo felt that his qi was gradually running out and was dreaming about having such a pill. After another hour, Yimo's hands that had been massaging Ning Qingshue's back were beginning to shake. Although he felt that the qi in his body was not enough to continue, he still had to hold on. Despite knowing that he may lose his powers like this, he had no choice. He overestimated his powers and underestimated Ning Qingshue's injuries. Although Yimo's face gradually turned bad, Ning Qingshue's skin was continuously returning to a healthy white. The dark purple on her back also seemed to have been removed, layer by layer. Her face was gradually becoming ruddy and the tense, wrinkled skin due to pain started to relax. Although her meridians were sealed shut by Yimo, which still prevented her from waking up, he saw from her eyebrows that she had felt something. Yimo bit the tip of his tongue and forced the last sliver of his spiritual qi into her body. He continued to massage her, and after another half an hour, Yimo finally finished recovering the last bit of injury on Ning Qingsue. However, he could no longer resist and just collapsed on her back. As Yimo's face touched the soft skin on Ning Qingshue's back, a faint aroma reached his nostrils, shocking him as the scent immediately reminded him about Luoying. He got up quickly and helped Ning Qingxue to tie up her bras and put on clothes before flipping her back around. Poor Yimo, he had never touched something like a bra, and a small tie kept him troubled for a long time. He was almost sweating before he had managed to tie it back up. At this moment, Emo just realized that Ning Qingshua's front chest stood firm and massive, and two round white rabbits seemed to squeeze out, which made Emo feel astounded. With her perfect face, it made Emo almost unable to resist. However, Emo was drained and simply rested for a bit before unsealing Ning Qingshua's meridians and just left her to sleep. Before leaving, Emo packed up the things in the little case and looked at Ning Qingshua's hands that tightly held the case. He sighed and eventually didn't take the case away. He didn't even take anything inside it as well. When Emo walked out of the house, it was almost 3 a.m. He found a quiet place and rested for an hour. At approximately 4, Emo had basically recovered 70% of his strength. However, due to him treating Ning Qingxue before, his spirit chi was a bit unstable. However, Emo felt this was enough and thus headed toward that brother's mansion. When Emo came, the guards outside the mansion were snoring on a table. Emo casually knocked them out to prevent them from waking up too quickly and went into the room, shutting down every monitoring computer. He knew that these computers should be connected to the other computers in the compound, but since he had shut down the one with the recordings, they wouldn't be able to monitor anymore for the time being. He just didn't know if there were other monitoring computers. What made Emo curious was that when he went inside the mansion, there was another room with its lights on. Emo walked in a bit and scanned with his spirit sense. As expected, there were still a few people inside discussing something that still weren't sleeping. That brother who was there, but other than him, there was also a 20 or so year-old youth with a face that actually looked a bit similar to Song Shaowen. Two bulky men were standing at the door. Emo went over quietly, and with just 2 palms, these 2 bulky men silently collapsed. Brother Hu, that Wang Peng did things well today. With these 2 little girls staying over tonight with him, Qian Shiping shouldn't keep finding excuses anymore. I don't believe that Emo could still run with Qian Shiping helping us. Although this youth's voice wasn't loud, it was full of confidence. That brother Hu nodded and said, "You're right, young Master Tan. Although Qian Shiping is only SOSO, the power behind him is sometimes more useful than a government-wanted list. I'm just worried that those few old people under his father would disapprove." Disapprove? Qian Shiping is Qian Longto's only son. Even if he wanted the moon in the skies, he would pick it for him. With his power, he would have 10 times more ways of finding Emo than I have. Although the Song family is one of the 5 great families, there are still some things that we can't do overtly. It would be best if we hand it to Qian Longtu. This young Master Tan seemed to take Qian Longtu very seriously, but was obviously contemptuous towards Qian Shiping. After stopping, he said, "Tianji is getting worse. He actually got 2 idiots to take away Ning Qingxue. Not only did they not get the person here, but they got themselves into trouble. Otherwise, if Ning Qingxue had been here, she would have been so much better than those 2 girls. I also want to enjoy the taste of the prettiest girl in Beijing. What a failure of a person." He even sneered after talking. "I will take care of Tianji and his 2 underlings. They are still regretting in the basement." But looking at Ning Qingxue, she seemed to have some feelings for Emo, that disabled person. "Perhaps we can use this to block Emo and Ning Hai," Brother Hu said. Young Master Tin shook his head. "You are underestimating Emo. According to my recent investigation, I found this guy was the typical person who acts like a pig to eat the tiger. Not only is he very strong, but he is also very cunning. If it wasn't for this, it wouldn't be necessary for us to go to someone like Qian Longtu. After all, if this spreads, it won't do good for the Song family." Emo had finally understood the whole situation. This young Master Tan should be from the Song family and was here just for him, and they accidentally injured Ning Qingxue instead of abducting her. Emo scanned out his spirit sense and indeed found 3 men on their knees in the basement. In the room not far away, he saw 2 other girls with their hair covering their faces, laying on the bed completely nude, and beside them was a young man. However, these 2 girls were full of bruises, and it was unknown if they were asleep or unconscious, but by the looks of it, these 2 girls were the 2 girls young Master Tan was talking about. Emo suddenly discovered that one of the girls seemed a bit familiar, and soon he recognized this girl from Ninghai University and was even considered as one of the top 10 prettiest girls there. "It's getting late. Brother Hu, we should get some rest now." After saying that, young Master Tan stood up. Before Brother Hu could respond, the door was kicked open. At the same time, a cold voice said, "There's no need to rest. From today onward, there will be plenty of time for you to rest." Chapter 76. Master. Chapter 76. Master O? It's you. Yemo. The man called Brother Hu immediately recognized Yemo since he had seen his photo countless times. He didn't even bother to think before turning around and throwing a punch. The wind force of the punch was mainly focused in the direction of Yemo. Yemo knew that this Brother Hu was just as he had thought, a master, and he wanted to test how strong his power was, so he only threw a punch in response. Crack, the sound of bones breaking resounded in the room. Yemo took 2 steps back and reached the door. Meanwhile, Brother Hu fell 2 steps back too and rammed onto the young Master Tan. With the clash of the fists, both of their fists had bones fractured. Yemo's eyes grew cold as he realized that his power actually didn't mean much in this place. Although he had only recovered 70% of his power, there definitely was plenty of people much stronger than him. Yellow level tertiary stage. Brother Hu's eyes were filled with shock as he spat out the 4 words. However, since the bones of his hand had broke, he didn't dare to keep fighting with Yemo. He didn't have the ability to recover bones like Yemo, and, although he was able to cultivate inner chi, broken bone injuries required about a month to heal for him. Seeing that Yemo and Brother Hu were even, young Master Tan showed a sliver of worry in his eyes as he didn't expect Yemo to be this strong. Actually, he had never seen anyone more powerful than Brother Hu, and he had even heard that Brother Hu was a disciple of the ancient martial arts. Since Yemo was able to block one of Brother Hu's fists, there was no way that he wouldn't be shocked over this. Although he didn't know what yellow-level tertiary stage meant, Yemo thought it was probably how the levels of martial arts were called here. Young Master Tan saw Yemo's power and was about to take his phone out to make a call, but since Yemo already knew that he was from the Song family and came here to capture him, he didn't have any thought of being lenient and threw out a metal nail casually. Before he even finished dialing the number on this phone, the metal nail had struck young Master Tan in the forehead. "You actually killed young Master Tan?" Brother Hu had shock and anger in his expression. Yemo smiled faintly. "I also killed Song Shaowen." "What? Do you have a problem with that?" Brother Hu's eyes immediately went back to normal as he thought. Yeah, he had even killed Song Shaowen, so he would have no more pressure in eliminating Song Shaotan. "If you can answer a few questions for me, perhaps I can let you go today?" Yemo stared coldly at this Brother Hu. "Haha, let me, Hu Chiu, go? You didn't even have the upper hand before. Since you came today, don't leave." Hu Chiu's healthy hand took out a whip from somewhere and immediately jumped up. The whip in his hand turned into a flurry of images and rushed towards Yemo. It was so fast that, looking at the countless whip's images, Yemo didn't dare to go in. If it had been before he had treated Ning Qingxue, he would be able to take on the whip forcefully. But now, although he had recovered 70% of his strength, his chi was still a bit unstable. Yemo understood his situation right now and immediately dodged. However, the room was too small, and his back was whipped. A burning sensation came, and Yemo knew that he had shed at least a layer of skin with that blow. It definitely brought out a gash that wasn't shallow. Seeing that his whip attack had succeeded, Hu Chiu pressed on. He almost turned his body immediately as the hand swirled towards Yemo again. Yemo had to admit that this Brother Hu's whip technique was really good. He was forced to recognize that he could only dodge in this small room, which would put him in a disadvantaged position. So in that case, he might as well charge straight in. Yemo gathered some chi again and, at the same time, he threw out 3 nails while preparing to grab the popper of the whip. Hu Chiu was shocked. He didn't think that someone would dare to even try grabbing the popper of his whip in his flurry of attacks. "You're asking to die," Hu Chiu sneered as the whip in his hand attacked faster. The countless shadows of the whip made it impossible for people to see clearly. 3 nails had shot over, but Hu Chiu had already felt it. He also understood that Yemo wanted to trade damage for damage, and unless he retreated with his whip, the nails would hit his body. Hu Chiu sneered. Trade damage for damage? He actually didn't take back the whip in his hand, and just sidestepped his body. One of the 3 nails was dodged while the other 2 hit accurately on the side of his left chest. Hu Qiu took 2 nails and still didn't take the whip back. He knew that Emo was powerful, so he took 2 nails just to be able to land a whip attack on him. The power of his whip was tremendous and very fast too. Not only was he absolutely confident that Emo couldn't grab it, but he also felt that Emo would definitely be seriously injured after that. That damage wasn't something that 2 mere nails could compare to. However, Hu Qiu wasn't a cultivator, so he didn't know something like spirit sense existed. By the time he reacted, Emo had already accurately grabbed the popper of his whip. A strong power passed over. Emo felt his chest pulsed and immediately knew that it wasn't good. Although he grabbed the whip, the side effects of treating Ning Qingxue had come. He even felt a fit of nausea. Emo knew that he couldn't hold on for long and didn't dare to drag it out. While Hu Qiu was startled, he focused the last bit of his qi and kicked Hu Qiu's chest. At this moment, Hu Qiu finally realized that Emo could find the real whip amongst all those shadows and grabbed it, which made him wondering if he was a dark level master. "You're a dark level." Hu Qiu pointed at Emo and spoke these few words before spewing out blood from his mouth like crazy. Then he collapsed and was dead before he had even reached the ground. Emo gave out a long sigh of relief, thinking that today was too dangerous as he had almost lost his life here. He still wanted to capture this brother Hu and ask him about some things, but it was already the second time that he had overestimated himself that night. There really were powerful people everywhere in this world. It was just that he hadn't met them yet. According to Hu Qiu's words before his death, there might even be a level higher than his so-called dark level. Emo could feel a fit of dizziness coming and walked out holding on the wall. In the room not far away, there should be the son of Qian Longtu, Qian Shiping, who was assaulting those 2 young girls. Emo kicked open the room and pulled out this Qian Shiping. "Who are you? How dare you?" Qian Shiping was pulled out in his dreams. He was startled for a moment and looked at the weak-looking Emo. He thought of his situation and was immediately about to rage. "The person who kills you." Emo gasped for breath. Kicking open the door was quite burdensome. "Kill me? Ha ha ha. Do you know who I am? Kill me, and you will have nowhere to hide even if you flee throughout the entire country. You think?" Qian Shiping was still being arrogant until a metal nail pierced his forehead. He still didn't believe as he died that the person in front of him would dare to kill him since his dad was Qian Longtu. However, his consciousness had already begun to be obscured. Emo didn't dare to waste any more time. He felt that he was becoming weaker and weaker, so he walked into the underground floor and, as he saw 3 people still kneeling down, he shot out 3 more nails without hesitation. The 3 didn't even have time to react before they were dead. There was still another room with 2 people, but Emo didn't bother with it. It was probably Qian Shiping's underlings. Leave quickly. That was the only thing in Emo's mind. He took too much risk for one day. He hadn't expected Hu Qiu to be that strong, even stronger than he had thought. If that Hu Qiu wasn't too confident in his whip, it was questionable if Emo would even be able to walk out today. Chapter 77. Hesitant Yun Bing. Chapter 77. Hesitant Yun Bing rubbed her fatigued eyes as her mind wandered elsewhere. Ever since the thing that had happened 8 years ago, she had always been unwilling to return to Beijing, and her boyfriend also left her due to that thing. However, the one who assaulted her was still roaming free in Beijing. Even the 7-year-old Ting Ting was taken away forcefully by their family. The reason she hadn't slept for the whole night was that her boyfriend from those years ago, Feng Rong, came back from America. 8 years ago, after that thing happened, he had never appeared again. Afterward, when she knew that he went to America, she was really hurt at the time since he had left without notice when she needed him the most. However, today he actually came back and requested her to come to Beijing. She had seen it when she opened an email on her computer earlier and realized that it had been sent by Feng Rong. He explained to her that he didn't even know what had happened to her at that time because the next day, he had been sent to America by his family, and he wasn't able to contact her again. Now, the first thing he did when he came back was to find her and even had to ask for her email address from other people when he came back to Beijing. He told Yun Bing that no matter what had happened, he wouldn't mind and that he still loved her. When Yunbing saw Feng Rong's email, her first thought was to delete it, but seeing Feng Rong's love in his words and that she might still have feelings toward her first love, Yunbing hesitated. She was scared of the person who assaulted her those years ago, and if Feng Rong still loved her, he could have taken her to America, and she would have left that nightmare behind. If she hadn't known about the misunderstanding with Yimo last time, she would have perhaps gone to Beijing, but she felt guilty. Yimo had saved her, and she wanted to say thank you in front of him at the very least. However, she had never been able to even catch a glimpse of him since that encounter in school. Although Su Jingwen told her that Yimo was on bad terms with a major power and couldn't show himself, Yun Bing kept fantasizing that she would be able to see him once in Ninghai. Otherwise, even if she left Ninghai, she would still feel unrest at heart. Another reason she still didn't want to move was that she didn't want to remember the traumatic memories. She felt scared toward Beijing from the bottom of her heart. Now that Feng Rong came back, should she go or not? Although she still resented him, since he said that he didn't know, and the first thing he did when he came back was to look for her, it made Yun Bing feel that she was still remembered. After all these years, she had become a forgotten corner. Although her cold personality gave her fewer troubles, every time she came back home, she felt lonely in her cold room. She would reminisce the small things in her first love. However, was it really true that Feng Rong did not know what had happened? Even if he didn't, did his family not tell him? And not a single message in 8 years. How was this possible? Yun Bing suddenly didn't want to think about that anymore. After thinking for a long while, Yun Bing sighed. She eventually decided to have a look at Beijing. After all, Ting Ting was still there. Although she was very scared of that person, sometimes, avoiding wasn't necessarily the best solution. She opened a file and prepared to write a letter for Su Jingwen to give to Yimo. When Yun Bing opened up a file, the bottom corner of her screen showed a news. She was about to close it when the image that her eyes saw seemed familiar. Although it wasn't clear, Yun Bing still felt this was familiar. She immediately opened the news. Ning High Master, Shi Ying, crushed the trainer of the Korean-style Taekwondo club. The flashy title and the images below stunned her. She really felt that that person looked like Yimo, but his face wasn't clear enough. And the name on there was Shi Ying, not Yimo. Although Yun Bing didn't really care about things that happened at the school, she still heard about the Korean-style club, but she was already past the years of raging adolescence, so she only took notice of it and left it there. She didn't think that a Shi Ying would suddenly appear in Ninghai and beat that Pu Dongheng with only one move. Usually, Yun Bing would leave it there after reading it, but this Shi Ying looked a bit like Yimo, so Yun Bing immediately logged onto the news page of the university. At this moment, she finally understood what popular was. Looking at the time, it was 4 a.m., but the forum was still full of people. The top post had been clicked over 1 million times already, and there were thousands of replies at the bottom. The title was very clear: Shi Ying, our handsome man. Every time she refreshed, there would be more comments. Okay, I'll admit, I admire Shi Ying, but I guarantee that I'm not gay. Carrying the sh** bucket into the dining hall. 1. I'm sure that brother Shi Ying is the strongest in Ninghai. Sitting on the grave smoking the loneliness. Wow, let me tell you. I have a personal signature from brother Shi Ying. Get jealous. Clearwater. I was happy I had a place to stand. Shi Ying, I'm really in love with you. What should I do from now? Who is changing the mark on my epitaph? Who captured the recording our brother Shi Ying like this? I heavily object. Wearing underwear. There were actually thousands of replies below. Yun Bing didn't read all of them and just opened the video at the top. The scene where Yimo fought Pu Dongheng immediately showed. Obviously, this was HQ recording. Pu Dongheng's face was very clear, but Yimo's face was always slightly obscured. The fighting scene was very short. Within a clash, Pu Dongheng was kicked flying. Yun Bing was stunned, seeing the clip. Although it wasn't very long, she felt that this person was Yimo. But why was it that in the same recording, Yimo's face was always obscured, but other scenes were very clear? Looking at the time, it was already 4:40 am. Yun Bing couldn't sit down anymore. What if it was Yimo, and she had missed this opportunity? Thinking about this, Yun Bing quickly got downstairs, and drove the car toward the Ning High Technology University. It was in the morning, and there were still cars on the road, but not much. So Yunbing took a shortcut and didn't see anyone on the road for a long time, and decided to drive very fast. However, a stumbling figure on the side of the road almost crashed into Yunbing's car, and from her rear mirror, she saw that figure fall onto the road after she had driven her car past. Although she was sure her car didn't touch that person, Yunbing still drove back and opened the window. "Are you okay?" The person on the ground didn't answer. Using the dim yellow road lights, Yunbing saw the blood on this person. She was shocked. Did she actually bump into this person? Fearing that she crashed into someone, Yunbing quickly got off the car and helped the man on the ground to get up. However, when she saw this person's face, Yunbing was truly frightened. The person that was laying in her arms was Yimo. How did he become like this? The clothes on his back were ripped, and there was a long gash in which the bones could be seen. His face was very pale, and at this moment, Yimo had his eyes closed. He was obviously unconscious. Yunbing became worried. Although she didn't know how Yimo became like this, she knew that Yimo's condition was severe. She quickly dragged Yimo into the car. Yunbing's first thought was to drive Yimo to the hospital, but Su Jingwen's words rung in her ears again. Yimo was on the bad side of a big power and had nowhere to hide, so he ran out of Ninghai. If she sent him to the hospital now, would that person know? Notes: 1. Those are the usernames of the people on the forums. Chapter 78. Whose Blood? Chapter 78. Whose blood? Yunbing was sweating profusely until she finally managed to drag Yimo into her room. Luckily, it was 5 a.m. and was pretty much the darkest period before dawn. No one in her district got up that early, and therefore no one had noticed her. Although she didn't know who Yimo got into conflict with, she still decided to park her car in the parking so that people wouldn't suspect her. She carefully closed the door and parked the car before coming back to carry Yimo onto the bed. She reached out her hand and touched Yimo's nose, and there was still warm air coming in and out, so finally, Yunbing was able to rest her heart as she thought that he should be just temporarily unconscious. She got a tub of hot water and decided to wash Yimo. After she had taken off Yimo's first layer of clothes, she arrived at his underwear covered in blood, but ended up being too embarrassed to take them off for him and didn't even dare to look. She grabbed a towel and covered it, and only then did she dare to help clean Yimo. The wound on Yimo's back looked very severe. Yunbing couldn't imagine what could cause such a deep wound. Although Yimo's wound was very deep, his muscles were extraordinarily strong. If Yunbing didn't see Yimo's firm muscles for herself, she wouldn't even believe such a quiet-looking Yimo would have this body of muscles that looked so aesthetic. Yunbing felt her face blush, and the hand she used to wipe Yimo with was shaky. She had never had the experience of seeing a man's naked torso. Even when she had been our ped and became pregnant 8 years ago, she was drugged and unconscious. However, her family was so scared of that family's power that with just one sentence, they didn't dare to allow her to abort the child. She didn't blame her family because they indeed couldn't mess with that family. Even now when she thought about it, Yunbing felt shaky. She was really scared of that person, so she kept hiding in Ninghai. Even for the new year, she didn't want to return to Beijing. The instant Yimo had collapsed, he knew things weren't good, and with his strong will, he forced himself to wake up. However, the person he saw when he opened his eyes was actually Yunbing. Although he didn't have a good impression of her, he knew that he was countless times safer in Yunbing's hands compared to the Song family. Yimo relaxed and closed his eyes once again into unconsciousness. However, his body was starting to use his spirit chi to recover his extremely fatigued and damaged to the root body. "You're awake?" Yunbing, who had the towel in her hands, was startled as she saw Yimo open his eyes, so she called out in surprise immediately. However, she then saw that Yimo fainted once again. Yunbing quickly carried the water away and went back to the room to cover Yimo with blankets before she breathed a sigh of relief. Since he had woken up once, it should mean that he wasn't in a critical condition any longer. Yunbing, who hadn't slept for the night, also slept beside Yimo's bed. When Ning Qingxue opened her eyes, she discovered that the sun was already out. She laid down and didn't move. Was this heaven already? She didn't feel any pain on her body. On the contrary, she even felt extremely comfortable. Ning Qingxue gasped a sigh of relief. She was finally rid of that endless abyss of pain. She just didn't know if Yimo was well now. But soon, Ning Qingxue felt things weren't right. She was still lying on Yimo's bed, and everything in the room was as they used to be before. Nothing was different. What was this? Ning Qingxue bit the tip of her tongue and felt pain. Did she not die? Ning Qingxue, who was worried in her heart, sat up immediately and once again found out in surprise that all her wounds had healed. She didn't feel any bit of discomfort on her body, and instead, it was filled with vigor and spirit. The little case. Ning Qingxue grabbed the little case and checked inside, but nothing had disappeared. Everything was here. Wait. She remembered clearly that last night. She grabbed the knife and was about to commit suicide. So why was the knife still in the case? Did she lose her memory? This was definitely impossible. Ning Qingxue examined the case and everything inside closely, and she discovered that one bottle had 2 less heart protection pill. She had counted each and every pill multiple times, so she couldn't be wrong. Ning Qingxue suddenly felt scared. She had been injured seriously. How could she heal up in one night? Besides, she clearly remembered she had the knife in her hands and was about to commit suicide. She even remembered the feeling of having pierced in something before she had lost her consciousness, and yet, why was she all right without a single wound? And why did she still feel pain? It wasn't like she had died at all. Ning Qingxue turned around and saw on her bed that there was indeed a few drops of blood, but she was sure she didn't have a wound that bled on her body. So where did this blood come from? Mom! As soon as Ning Qingxue opened her mouth, the door was opened. Ning Qingxue's mom Lan Yu rushed in. Qingxue, are you all right? Before Lan Yu even came in, her voice sounded. She didn't know what had happened the night before, but she had suddenly fallen asleep and slept all the way until 7 or 8 in the morning. Lan Yu almost couldn't forgive herself for her mistake. Qingxue, how did you sit up? Your face. How is it so healthy? You're all right now? Qingxue, you really are all right. Lan Yu already forget that Ning Qingxue had been severely injured and recovered in only one night. In her eyes, it was meant to be that her daughter got better. As for the process, she ignored it automatically. Ning Qingxue saw her mother and knew that she wasn't dreaming and didn't die either. She really did recover, but as for how, she didn't know. After Lan Yu had said all these, she grabbed Ning Qingxue and finally started to think how her daughter got better without any reason. She had been severely wounded, and thinking about this, Lan Yu immediately asked, Qingxue, what happened to you? How did you recover? Ning Qingxue shook her head. She didn't understand either. She seemed to have the blurred memory that someone came and treated her last night, but who could cure her serious injury in just one night? Mom, I want to think alone for what had really happened, Ning Qingxue suddenly said. Lan Yu was elated now. Although her daughter's recovery was full of mystery, she still rather would believe that her ancestors protected Qingxue than believing this was impossible. Seeing that Ning Qingxue had said this, she still closely examined Ning Qingxue's back before finally being relieved. I'll cook some congee for you. You should rest some more. Don't move around too much. After her mom had left, Ning Qingxue started to think carefully. She wasn't as optimistic as her mother. There was definitely someone who treated her injuries, but who could have so much ability to cure her completely while she was asleep? This was something even the Hongrue hospital couldn't treat. Suddenly, Ning Qingxue sat up. Since someone treated her last night, didn't that mean her top was taken off? She quickly took off her clothes and looked. It was as she thought. Her face immediately went pale. Her top was taken off. Even her bras were buttoned wrong. Since that person could see her back, it meant that her chest was also seen. Who was this? Ning Qingxue suddenly felt her body starting to shake. She would rather die than let someone, who she didn't even know, look at her body. Ning Qingxue looked at the few drops of blood on the bed. That wasn't hers. So whose blood would it be? Was it from the person who treated her last night? Chapter 78. Whose blood? Chapter 78. Whose blood? Yun Bing was sweating profusely until she finally managed to drag Emo into her room. Luckily, it was 5 a.m. and was pretty much the darkest period before dawn. No one in her district got up that early, and therefore no one had noticed her. Although she didn't know who Emo got into conflict with, she still decided to park her car in the parking so that people wouldn't suspect her. She carefully closed the door and parked the car before coming back to carry Emo onto the bed. She reached out her hand and touched Emo's nose, and there was still warm air coming in and out. So finally, Yun Bing was able to rest her heart as she thought that he should be just temporarily unconscious. She got a tub of hot water and decided to wash Emo. After she had taken off Emo's first layer of clothes, she arrived at his underwear covered in blood, but ended up being too embarrassed to take them off for him and didn't even dare to look. She grabbed a towel and covered it, and only then did she dare to help clean Emo. The wound on Emo's back looked very severe. Yun Bing couldn't imagine what could cause such a deep wound. Although Emo's wound was very deep, his muscles were extraordinarily strong. If Yun Bing didn't see Emo's firm muscles for herself, she wouldn't even believe such a quiet-looking Emo would have this body of muscles that looked so aesthetic. Yun Bing felt her face blush, and the hand she used to wipe Emo with was shaky. She had never had the experience of seeing a man's naked torso. Even when she had been our ped and became pregnant 8 years ago, she was drugged and unconscious. However, her family was so scared of that family's power that with just one sentence, they didn't dare to allow her to abort the child. She didn't blame her family because they indeed couldn't mess with that family. Even now when she thought about it, Yun Bing felt shaky. She was really scared of that person, so she kept hiding in Ninghai. Even for the new year, she didn't want to return to Beijing. The instant Emo had collapsed, he knew things weren't good, and with his strong will, he forced himself to wake up. However, the person he saw when he opened his eyes was actually Yun Bing. Although he didn't have a good impression of her, he knew that he was countless times safer in Yun Bing's hands compared to the Song family. Emo relaxed and closed his eyes once again into unconsciousness. However, his body was starting to use his spirit chi to recover his extremely fatigued and damaged to the root body. "You're awake?" Yun Bing, who had the towel in her hands, was startled as she saw Emo open his eyes, so she called out in surprise immediately. However, she then saw that Emo fainted once again. Yun Bing quickly carried the water away and went back to the room to cover Emo with blankets before she breathed a sigh of relief. Since he had woken up once, it should mean that he wasn't in a critical condition any longer. Yun Bing, who hadn't slept for the night, also slept beside Emo's bed. When Ning Qingxue opened her eyes, she discovered that the sun was already out. She laid down and didn't move. Was this heaven already? She didn't feel any pain on her body. On the contrary, she even felt extremely comfortable. Ning Qingxue gasped a sigh of relief. She was finally rid of that endless abyss of pain. She just didn't know if Emo was well now. But soon, Ning Qingxue felt things weren't right. She was still lying on Emo's bed, and everything in the room was as they used to be before. Nothing was different. What was this? Ning Qingxue bit the tip of her tongue and felt pain. Did she not die? Ning Qingxue, who was worried in her heart, sat up immediately and once again found out in surprise that all her wounds had healed. She didn't feel any bit of discomfort on her body, and instead, it was filled with vigor and spirit. The little case. Ning Qingxue grabbed the little case and checked inside, but nothing had disappeared. Everything was here. Wait. She remembered clearly that last night. She grabbed the knife and was about to commit suicide. So why was the knife still in the case? Did she lose her memory? This was definitely impossible. Ning Qingxue examined the case and everything inside closely, and she discovered that one bottle had 2 less heart protection pill. She had counted each and every pill multiple times, so she couldn't be wrong. Ning Qingxue suddenly felt scared. She had been injured seriously. How could she heal up in one night? Besides, she clearly remembered she had the knife in her hands and was about to commit suicide. She even remembered the feeling of having pierced in something before she had lost her consciousness, and yet, why was she all right without a single wound? And why did she still feel pain? It wasn't like she had died at all. Ning Qingxue turned around and saw on her bed that there was indeed a few drops of blood, but she was sure she didn't have a wound that bled on her body. So where did this blood come from? Mom! As soon as Ning Qingxue opened her mouth, The door was opened. Ning Qingshue's mom Lan Yu rushed in. Qingxue, are you all right? Before Lan Yu even came in, her voice sounded. She didn't know what had happened the night before, but she had suddenly fallen asleep and slept all the way until 7 or 8 in the morning. Lan Yu almost couldn't forgive herself for her mistake. Huh, Qingxue, oh, how did you sit up? Your face. How is it so healthy? You're all right now? Qingxue, you really are all right. Lan Yu already forget that Ning Qingxue had been severely injured and recovered in only one night. In her eyes, it was meant to be that her daughter got better. As for the process, she ignored it automatically. Ning Qingxue saw her mother and knew that she wasn't dreaming and didn't die either. She really did recover, but as for how, she didn't know. After Lan Yu had said all these, she grabbed Ning Qingxue and finally started to think how her daughter got better without any reason. She had been severely wounded, and thinking about this, Lan Yu immediately asked, Qingxue, what happened to you? How did you recover? Ning Qingxue shook her head. She didn't understand either. She seemed to have the blurred memory that someone came and treated her last night, but who could cure her serious injury in just one night? Mom, I want to think alone for what had really happened, Ning Qingxue suddenly said. Lan Yu was elated now. Although her daughter's recovery was full of mystery, she still rather would believe that her ancestors protected Qingxue than believing this was impossible. Seeing that Ning Qingxue had said this, she still closely examined Ning Qingshue's back before finally being relieved. I'll cook some congee for you. You should rest some more. Don't move around too much. After her mom had left, Ning Qingxue started to think carefully. She wasn't as optimistic as her mother. There was definitely someone who treated her injuries, but who could have so much ability to cure her completely while she was asleep? This was something even the Hongrue hospital couldn't treat. Suddenly, Ning Qingxue sat up. Since someone treated her last night, didn't that mean her top was taken off? She quickly took off her clothes and looked. It was as she thought. Her face immediately went pale. Her top was taken off. Even her bras were buttoned wrong. Since that person could see her back, it meant that her chest was also seen. Who was this? Ning Qingxue suddenly felt her body starting to shake. She would rather die than let someone, who she didn't even know, look at her body. Ning Qingxue looked at the few drops of blood on the bed. That wasn't hers. So whose blood would it be? Was it from the person who treated her last night? Rate translation quality no comments. Be the first. Chapter 79. Was it Yemo? Qingxue, you're all right. A voice full of surprise sounded at the door. Li Mumei just pushed the door open and came in, and behind her was the still beaming with joy Lan Yu. Even Su Jingwen was here with the two nurses behind her who looked at Ning Qingxue in disbelief. Come in. Ning Qingxue focused her mind. Although she was still distressed, she decided not to think of it for now. What happened? Qingxue, let me look at your back. Li Mumei had seen Ning Qingshue's wound before. Now Ning Qingxue suddenly recovered. Although she didn't understand, she was still genuinely happy. Ning Qingxue shook her head and said, No need to look, I can feel it. I'm really better. I don't know what happened yesterday. She originally wanted to say that someone had cured her last night, but when the words came to mouth, she swallowed it down. Although Lan Yu had examined her, she still wasn't sure and went behind Ning Qingxue. She carefully opened her daughter's clothes, and of course, she saw that her back had recovered to its previous clean white skin with no flaws at all. Only now was she sure that her daughter had truly recovered. She was so excited that she almost shed tears and thanked God that her daughter recovered in one night. The two nurses excitedly came over and helped Ning Qingxue do a simple checkup and discovered that Ning Qingxue was really cured. Other people didn't know how bad Ning Qingshue's injuries were, but these two nurses knew clearly since they had been the ones taking care of Ning Qingxue. However, they didn't expect that such heavy wounds would suddenly be cured. There was nothing more mysterious than this. Was it a wrong diagnosis? When Ning Qingxue heard that the doctors were coming over, she immediately refused another checkup. She knew her body better than anyone else. She was 100% healthy right now, but didn't want the whole world to know about this. Ning Zhongfei flew over to Ninghai on that day. He was happier than anyone else for her daughter's sudden recovery. He only had one daughter, and she was a treasure to him. However, Ning Qingxue still refused her family's request to leave Ninghai and still wanted to stay there. As for the person who treated her last night, she thought about it and had a vague impression. She started to remember that after she had finished recording her will and wanted to commit suicide, her knife didn't seem to have pierced into her own throat, but instead, it had pierced into another person's arm, and afterward, she had immediately fainted. Was that person Yimo? Or was it that she was thinking about him too much and pretended the person that night to be him? Since when did Yimo know how to cure wounds? And even how did he have that much ability? Ning Qingxue suddenly remembered that day when Yimo had a stall on the street to practice medicine. Was it really him? Did he really know medicine? If it was him, then the blood on the bed should be left by him. Seeing her mom and the others were leaving, Ning Qingxue called out to Li Mumei. Although she could get up now, and her body condition was excellent, she didn't want to overdo it in case everyone noticed it. Mumei, can you help me analyze the blood on this cloth? Ning Qingxue cut off the blood stain on the bed and gave it to Li Mumei as she wanted to know if this blood was the same as Yimo's. Although she couldn't be 100% sure it was Yimo's through blood type, at least that pointed her in a direction. If this was his blood, then she would know who the person treated her was, and the person who looked at her body would also be him. In that case, she would feel much peaceful in her heart. Li Mumei took over the cloth but didn't ask anything. If Ning Qingxue didn't want to say anything, she wouldn't say it even if she had asked. Last night, Ning Qingxue's sudden recovery was the biggest thing for her parents. However, for the students in Ninghai, Shi Ying beating Pu Dongheng was the biggest news. However, compared to these two things, an earthquake erupted amongst the authority due to the murder in the mansion. This was because the people murdered were very influential. One was the young master Song Shaowen of the Song family. The other was scarier because his name was Qian Shiping. Qian Shiping wasn't anything special himself, but his father was called Qian Longtu and had a title, someone who could shake the ground with a step. If the mountain group in Japan and the Black Glove clan from the west were influential, then Nanqing was the most influential in the east. And Qian Longtu was the boss of Nanqing. Qian Shiping was his one and only son, and he had him at 40. Qian Longtu's real name was Qian Baihe, someone from the Huzhong state. He joined the underground world at the age of 11, and until now, there was a place for him even on the world stage. He had his own private army. However, it was a hired army that stayed in Africa, and he, himself, remained at an extremely grandiose mansion in Africa. Nanqing's things basically didn't need his management. Typically, his henchmen took care of everything and just needed to give him a report. Even the heads of small countries didn't dare to offend the leader of Nanqing, but today, his only son was murdered in Ninghai. This was absolutely an earthquake. Whether it was Song Shaowen's death or Qian Shiping's death, it wasn't something that the government authorities here could handle. Yun Bing was woken up by the phone. It was already 9 a.m. She looked at Emo, who was still sleeping like last night. However, his pale face had a sliver of ruddiness. Yun Bing felt assured and picked up the phone. The phone was from her colleague Wang Yu asking her why she didn't go to the school today. Yun Bing hurriedly asked Wang Yu to apply a leave for her. Then, she used her towel and wiped up Emo's body before preparing to cook some food. In case he happened to wake up, he could have some. Since Emo was rescued by her from last night, he had remained unconscious. He only opened his eyes once but continued to sleep, and since Yun Bing didn't dare to send him to the hospital, she didn't know what to do anymore. She didn't know if that shirring from last night was Emo. Yun Bing opened up her laptop once again and wanted to search on the news forum of the university. But the news that appeared in front of her eyes almost made her throw her mouse. Last night, in a private mansion, 6 people were murdered. Last night. Wasn't that when Emo was injured? Did he do it? Yun Bing thought of before when Emo had beaten Jin Wanxiao and her schoolmate until they became mentally disabled, and was almost certain this event was also done by Emo. Why was he so violent? Yun Bing turned around and looked at Emo complicatedly. She then searched the news of the murder again. As expected, on some small, unofficial website, she uncovered the truth. Last night, because 2 young masters of big families took away 2 girls and our asterisk ped them in the mansion, someone attacked that place and killed 6 people. Only the two girls weren't killed. Yun Bing sighed. She was sure it was done by Yimo. He liked to fight against this injustice. It was the same with her last time. However, last time he didn't kill, but this time he did. Did he have violent tendencies? Regardless of whether Yimo had violent tendencies or not, he was someone who had saved her life, and to her, he had even saved something more important than life. Furthermore, for the event of the previous night, she also stood on Yimo's side. However, she believed that Yimo shouldn't kill. Killing people so freely was too absurd in this society. Yun Bing also rejoiced for not sending Yimo to the hospital. If she had, then he would have been already exposed. Chapter 80. Confirmed it's him. Chapter 80. Confirmed it's him. Yun Bing hadn't left the house for the entire day. She didn't even go out to buy vegetables. She could only focus on when Yimo would wake up and kept heating the kanji again and again. But he still didn't have any signs of waking up. If Yimo's breathing wasn't normal, she would have thought that he wouldn't survive. She had never seen someone unconscious for so long. But even if she didn't go out, she still knew that what was happening outside wasn't trivial, as she could see the street full of police cars patrolling every so often. She really couldn't understand who Yimo had killed and why it would cause such a ruckus. In the house Ning Qingxue lived at, other than Su Jingwen and her parents, everyone else had left, so Ning Qingxue got up and ate something. She was staring at that silver heart grass when Li Mumei suddenly ran in. "Qingxue, you can get up?" Li Mumei was joyful from the bottom of her heart. "Yeah, I feel much better, Mumei. What happened?" Ning Qingxue looked at the hurried Li Mumei and asked. Li Mumei then realized that she was going to say something. "Qingxue, I heard that Song Xiaotan was killed in Ninghai last night. The person who killed him also killed 5 other people. However, one seemed to have a bigger background than Song Xiaotan, but I don't know who it was." Ning Qingxue thought for a moment and asked, "Mumei, do you know who the other people are?" Li Mumei shook her head and said, "I don't know either. I have no news of the other people. I only knew from a friend." However, this thing got pretty big, and many journalists came to Ninghai. I know a lot of journalists from Beijing, so I might have more information tomorrow. Why did Song Xiaotan come to Ninghai? Was he the one who ordered people to injure her? Then who killed Song Xiaotan? Ning Qingxue suddenly thought of Yimo and immediately asked, "Mumei, did you get the blood analysis back?" "Yeah." Li Mumei gave the report to Ning Qingxue. Ning Qingxue looked, and she became quickly excited. "What's wrong, Qingxue?" Li Mumei hurriedly asked. Ning Qingxue shook her head and said, "No, nothing. I'm going in to sit. I'll come out later." Then, she walked into the room. Li Mumei looked at Ning Qingxue and thought that she had just recovered and might be feeling tired, so she didn't bother too much. However, Ning Qingxue was elated because the blood type was exactly the same as Yimo's. They were both B-type. Although it was far from sufficient to know if it was Yimo through blood type, Ning Qingxue still firmly believed this was him. She seemed to feel Yimo came back. Was he related to the incident of their death last night? If it wasn't Yimo, who else would dare to touch the Song family's people? Yimo dared to kill even Song Xiaowen, so why not Song Xiaotan too? Besides, he had the motive for it. Knowing that it was entirely possible that Yimo came back to save her, she finally felt relieved in her heart. After all, she had already admitted that Yimo was her husband, so if he had seen her body, it wouldn't really matter. However, Ning Qingxue suddenly felt unrest. If Yimo came to Ninghai and killed Song Xiaotan, then wouldn't he be in a very dangerous situation right now? What if he still hadn't escaped out of Ninghai? Ning Qingxue became worried, and now, she wished that the person who came last night wasn't Yimo. Because if Yimo really did it, then he wouldn't be able to escape from Ninghai with the Song family's power. "Huh, Qingxue, you're all right?" Su Wei asked in surprise. She knew her injuries were grave. The hospital even gave out her final days, but now, Ning Qingxue stood in front of her perfectly fine. "What was this?" "Yeah, I've recovered already. Perhaps the hospital misdiagnosed." "My injuries weren't that serious," Ning Qingxue nodded and said. Su Wei was dubious. Ning Qingxue went to the best hospital in Ninghai, one that was famous even in the country. How could they make such a serious mistake? Besides, she had seen with her own eyes Ning Qingxue being hit with that stick. Seeing that Su Wei didn't really believe her, Ning Qingxue quickly changed the subject. How come you didn't go to work again today? Sigh, why are your tones exactly the same? Yesterday, Su Wei suddenly stopped. She suddenly remembered that Yi Mo told her yesterday not to tell Ning Qingxue, but she had almost forgotten today. Although Su Wei had stopped her words in time, Ning Qingxue had discerned it and asked, "What happened yesterday? Did Yi Mo come back?" At the same time, Ning Qingxue had subconsciously grabbed Su Wei's hands. Su Wei looked at her hands that were tightly clutched by Ning Qingxue. She knew she had spilled it and had no way to keep hiding it. She sighed and said, "Yesterday Yi Mo came back and looked at the flower pots for half a day. Then, he asked me about you and left. He probably went to the hospital to see you." "What? Did you not see him?" Ning Qingxue suddenly let go of Su Wei's hands and mumbled, "It really was him. He's all right. He came back. So he was really the one too. Qingxue, go rest. You just recovered. Don't walk around everywhere. Su Wei, we'll eat together later. Her mom and I are cooking right now." Li Mumei saw Ning Qingxue, who stood at the doorway, and walked over. "Qingxue, why is your face red? Are you hot?" Li Mumei saw Ning Qingxue's face was as red as an apple and asked concerningly. Ning Qingxue was thinking about Yi Mo, who came over last night and didn't know if he heard her words. Thinking about how she had called him Lao Gong, she felt really embarrassed and hoped he didn't hear it. But now, she was 100% sure that the one who came last night was Yi Mo. She felt comfortable and even a little bit of sweetness in her heart. Now that Li Mumei asked, Ning Qingxue immediately thought that since Yi Mo came yesterday, then he must have killed Song Shout An to avenge her. Thinking about the events from last night, she realized that Yi Mo might still be escaping and immediately felt worried. "Qingxue." Li Mumei saw Ning Qingxue's face change rapidly and felt more worried. Ning Qingxue shook her head and said, "I'm fine, Mumei. You told me earlier that you know a lot of journalists in Beijing. Can you invite one out and let me see tonight?" Ning Qingxue wanted to know what happened last night through the journalist as a way to inadvertently find out about Yi Mo's situation. "Qingxue, you want to see a journalist? Don't you hate them?" Li Mumei spoke, but seeing Ning Qingxue didn't say anything else, she immediately continued, "Okay, I'll ask tonight. If all goes well, I should be able to get one or two." Chapter 81. Awake? Chapter 81. Awake. When Yi Mo woke up, it was already midnight. Suddenly, he felt that there was someone in his arms, and although there was no light on, Yi Mo's spirit sense made him realize that this person was Yun Bing. Before Yi Mo fainted for the second time, he knew that he was at Yun Bing's home. Therefore, he had closed off all his sense to recover. If he hadn't done that, there would have been more drawbacks. Perhaps it might have even resulted in him forever staying at the second stage of Qi gathering. After discovering who it was, he couldn't care too much. He didn't even say one sentence before going into a cultivating state. He didn't know how long he closed off his sense for, but he didn't expect to wake up with Yun Bing in his arms. But soon, Yi Mo understood what had happened. Yun Bing must have wanted to lean on the bed and sleep for a while, but after she had fallen asleep, it was cold at night, so she subconsciously moved towards the blanket. From how she didn't take her clothes off, it could be seen that she didn't have a good sleep for the past few days. Although Yi Mo knew that Yun Bing saved him yesterday, he couldn't understand why Yun Bing would try to find him before dawn since his relationship with Yun Bing was stale. Yun Bing even harbored enmity toward him, so why would she be willing to save him? Yi Mo covered Yun Bing with the blanket and took her hand away as he prepared to get down. Regardless of whether or not Yun Bing saved him because she knew him, he couldn't stay here. If Yun Bing woke up and wanted to cause even more trouble for him, he would be scared of having to hurt her. After all, she had saved him, and if Yun Bing hadn't brought him back, then the consequences would have been dire no matter who had found him. This time, he had been overconfident. Although he knew that his power wouldn't be the highest here, he was still a bit shocked when he met an actual opponent. After all, people didn't cultivate Qi here. Just when Yi Mo wanted to get off the bed, he found that the corner of his clothes was tightly grabbed by Yun Bing, so he simply checked up on his wound. He had already cured the wound of broken hand bone. And as for the wound on his back, Yunbing had put some cream he didn't recognize, and together with his spirit chi, it was pretty much healed already. He looked at his clothes and realized that the shirt was a bit weird. He even started to suspect if this was Yunbing's clothes. Yemo didn't bother to break away from Yunbing's hand. He just awkwardly took the shirt off. He suddenly remembered about his bag and wondered if Yunbing had brought it back. After all his things were inside there. His money, his clothes, his documents, and even a lot of medical herbs inside. But those weren't even the most significant part. The remaining seeds of his silver heartgrass were also inside the bag, and those were his most valuable belongings. It would be over if he lost these seeds. Besides, a piece of purple heart vine was also inside. Thinking about this, Yemo scanned out with his spirit sense, but immediately, his heart sunk as he didn't find his bag in the house. That meant that Yunbing didn't bring back his bag. Now, he didn't have clothes, and Yunbing didn't bring his bag back either. He didn't even have a cent on him. Yemo even wanted to immediately go out and look for his bag. After all, the contents of the bag were too important for him. But before this, he had to ask Yunbing. He couldn't care if Yunbing was still asleep and immediately started shaking her. Huh? Yunbing was shaken awake by Yemo and immediately screamed in shock. But soon she understood that it was Yemo and quickly covered her mouth. When she took her hands away, she then found out that she was grabbing a shirt and was the one who put this shirt on Yemo. Yunbing blushed and crawled up awkwardly. Oh, you're awake? Yemo nodded. Yes, thank you for saving me. I want to know if you have brought my bag back? Bag? Yunbing frowned. Last night when she dragged Yemo onto the car, he seemed to have something in his hand. She didn't really look at it and just stuffed it into the car. She didn't know if that was the bag Yemo was talking about. However, since Yemo asked about that bag immediately when he woke up, it meant that bag was paramount for him. Yunbing immediately turned on the bed lamp and saw Yemo, who sat there, was frowning. She had a sudden awkward feeling. They were sitting side by side at the head of the bed at midnight while Yemo was shirtless. They looked exactly like a couple. She suddenly thought of the scene described in prose. She forgot who wrote it, but it described this scene. Midnight, the husband sat up and ignited a cigarette. He smoked, and his eyes were frowning. I know. It's for his child's school feast tomorrow. Child? Yunbing suddenly thought of Ting Ting. That family was really cruel. It had been a few years already, but they wouldn't even let her see Ting Ting once. What's wrong? Yemo looked at Yunbing's changing face. But before Yunbing could answer, he asked again, did you remember where you put the bag? Ah, Yunbing suddenly came to reality. She didn't expect her to wander off. She hurriedly said, I remember I put some stuff in the trunk. I don't know if it was your bag since I was in a rush at the time and forgot. I'll check the car now. She was about to go out after she finished. Yemo quickly stopped her and said, Wait, I'll go. Just tell me where your car is. Yunbing shook her head. You must not go out. They are looking for you everywhere. If you go out now, they will apprehend you. You know what I did? Yemo looked at Yunbing in surprise. He thought about how she knew that he killed Song Xiaotan. Yunbing rolled her eyes towards Yemo and said, Yesterday morning, 6 people were killed in a mansion in Ninghai, and don't tell me you don't know about that. I just went out to look for you but met you on the way. Yemo, you're an adult now. Is killing something that should be done? Why don't you use your brain and think? Impulsiveness is a devil. Sigh, I have no idea what's going to happen to you, but I know that you'll be living a life on the run. After she had finished, Yunbing shook her head. Although she approved of Yemo saving people, she still thought it was unfathomable that Yemo killed 6 people. Yemo didn't care about the latter part of what Yunbing said. He just asked, How do you know I killed? Why did you go look for me? And how would you know I was there? Hearing Yemo's words, Yunbing's face showed some guilt. Yemo, sorry. I was looking for you to apologize to you. I know that you were saving me that day as well, but I only understood when I found the SD card from the camera. The reason I went to look for you yesterday was that I saw that Shering on the news of Ning High Technology University and thought that he looked like you. I was prepared to go there, but fortunately, I met you on the road. Looks like me? Yemo thought that he used a layer of chi to cover his face at the time. They shouldn't be able to capture a clear image. How did Yunbing know? I just noticed his face was similar to yours. That's why I tried my luck and went out to look for you. Tell me, are you sure-ing? Yunbing seemed to have forgotten about other things now. Yemo nodded, admitting that he was sure-ing. He also understood why Yunbing was saving him and didn't look for trouble. It was due to that card. Since you know I'm a killer, why aren't you scared? Are you that calm with every killer you meet? Yemo suddenly asked. Yunbing was stunned. She now realized that she really wasn't scared of him at all. She was only concerned and didn't even think about being scared. Had she always been that bold? But when she was with Yemo, she really didn't feel scared at all. Now that Yemo asked, she couldn't help but to shake her head and say, I was just a bit worried about you. But I wasn't scared, perhaps because you had saved me before, or maybe it was that you only killed the people that deserved to die. Chapter 82. Yunbing's Sigh. Chapter 82. Yunbing's Sigh. Hearing Yunbing's words, Yemo remained silent for a while. He had overestimated himself yesterday. He only went there because he was curious about Hu Qiu at the time and didn't expect Song Shout-an to be there as well. However, Ning Qingxue was injured because Song Shout-an sent people there, so he couldn't resist but to kill him. This had greatly deviated from his original plan. Originally, it wasn't much even if he killed Song Shout-an. He could leave Ning Hai during that night, but he hadn't expected Hu Qiu to be so much stronger than he had estimated and ended up heavily injured. If Yunbing didn't bring him back, perhaps he would be at the Song family compound already. Even if he had a strong background, he wouldn't be able to leave once he was in the Song family's hands, much less since he had no background anymore. What to do now? Yemo suddenly realized that he had no way left right now. Ning Hai must be in lockdown. If he had been in the third stage of Qi gathering by now, then he would be able to leave Ning Hai easily. But now, he was only in the late phase of the second stage. Seeing Yemo's silence, Yunbing thought that Yemo heard her words and wanted to go check if his bag was in the car. However, she was suddenly grabbed by Yemo, so she looked at him in confusion. Yemo shook his head and said, Don't go. The reason Yemo didn't let Yunbing go out was because, after his injuries, his spirit sense could surprisingly reach out to a distance of 12 to 15 meters. When his spirit sense scanned out, he found two people in casual clothing seemingly monitoring the people coming and going. Although he didn't know if this was related to him, Yemo still felt that it was better to be careful. Why? Obviously, Yunbing didn't know people were monitoring them and was curious why Yemo didn't seem to care about that bag all of a sudden. Yemo couldn't say he had a spirit sense, so he said, It's not safe to go down to the parking to get things in the middle of the night. Besides, it's easy to be seen by people and become a target of suspicion. Yunbing thought about it a while and believed that Yemo's words were true, so she didn't insist. Yemo estimated that since even Yunbing was able to deduce that he had killed these people, the Song family would definitely be able to find out that Yemo was the murderer. It seemed that he should leave Ning Hai as early as possible. After this thing, he could no longer go to Luotsong. He sighed and thought, plans really couldn't keep up with changes. He still wanted to find a place to settle down and plant his silver heart grass before going to the desert. But now, he couldn't do that. You should get some sleep. Yemo turned around and said to Yunbing, Aren't you sleeping? Yunbing thought that there was only one bed in the house. If she slept there, Yemo would have no place to sleep. Yemo shook his head. I'm not tired. You can sleep first. He really wasn't, and at this time, he wasn't in the mood to sleep anyway. Since his plans were gone down the drain, he had to make new ones. Looking at Yemo, who didn't even have a shirt on, Yunbing hesitated for a while before saying, There's still a few hours of night time, and the bed is really big. We can sleep on one side each. Yemo looked at Yunbing in surprise. He didn't expect Yunbing to say something like this. She didn't seem like an open person, but he didn't want Yunbing to think too much. So he nodded and said, Fine, go to sleep. I'll just lean on the bed for a while. He thought that he could cultivate on the bed as well anyway, and a few hours would pass really in a flash for him. Right now, he hadn't fully recovered yet, so he shouldn't be careless. Yemo sat there, and went into a cultivating state really quickly. However, Yun Bing wasn't so stable when she slept, which didn't match her cold face at all. She just turned once and hugged one of Yimo's leg again. Although Yimo was cultivating, he could still feel Yun Bing's body and the softness in front of her chest. Regardless of his past life or this life, he was a virgin in both as an ordinary man and as a cultivator. Although he was enticed, he cast the thoughts away hastily and didn't pay any more attention as he continued to cultivate. A few hours passed very quickly indeed. Yimo was still immersed in cultivation while Yun Bing slept very well, the corner of her mouth slightly raised up, seemingly in a good dream. Perhaps after that incident, she had never been able to sleep so well. She felt as though she held something dependable and no longer had that feeling of hollowness from before, so she held very tightly with her hands without the slightest intention of letting go. After Yimo had cultivated a big chi cycle, he opened his eyes and saw that the sky was not completely lit up yet. He looked at Yun Bing, who shrunk her head into the blanket while her body was pressed on him completely, and Yimo felt that it was getting hotter. Although he wanted to remove Yun Bing's hands, she seemed to stick onto him very tightly. Seeing her sleeping so sweetly, he sighed and didn't try to wake her again. He continued to cultivate to his next big cycle. He estimated that after he was done, Yun Bing should be up too. When Yimo entered the next big chi cycle again, Yun Bing suddenly woke up, and as soon as she opened her eyes, she immediately found out that she was hugging Yimo's leg. She got scared and immediately let go. Although the sky wasn't fully lit, she just felt there was a hot, burning sensation on her face. But immediately, she thought of Yimo. Did he really sit like this for the whole night? Seeing that Yimo still had his eyes closed as if he was still sleeping, Yun Bing finally released a sigh of relief. Luckily, Yimo was asleep. Otherwise, that would have been too embarrassing. However, when she thought again to what she was feeling, she realized that she had this worry-free serenity when she had hugged Yimo's leg as she slept, which had made her very comfortable and didn't feel any worry or fear. Furthermore, the aroma from his body was also very pleasant. It even gave her a sense of otherworldliness. Yun Bing looked at Yimo's sleeping young face and couldn't help but to touch her already 30-year-old face. Although it was still young and smooth, she still felt a bitterness in her heart and suddenly felt that perhaps it wasn't a good thing to go back to Beijing to see Feng Rong. There were some things she didn't dare to think about, but it didn't mean that they didn't exist. Was Feng Rong still the same as he used to be many years ago? She knew that she was no longer the Yun Bing from all those years ago. She only wanted to see Feng Rong and ask him why he simply left without notice all those years ago, and why he never had contacted her before. But now, she felt this was unnecessary. So what if he remembered her? So what if he didn't? If something similar happened again, would he disappear again? Was this sort of man reliable? So what if he could take her to America? Perhaps she simply missed Ting Ting too much, but even if she went to Beijing, would she even be able to see Ting Ting? Yimo was still asleep. Yun Bing looked down at her curvaceous body. She thought about that day when Yimo saw her body and suddenly felt this burning sensation from the bottom of her heart. She started to shake and felt she was entranced, so she quickly left the bedroom and drank a cup of cold water. Finally, she was able to gradually calm down. When she went back to the bedroom again, she didn't dare to stay on the bed. She watched Yimo quietly before making an almost inaudible sigh after some time, as she never would have thought she would have sexual urges toward Yimo. However, she still had a logical mind and knew that Yimo and she were two people on different paths. Whether it was now or in the future, they would have no more encounters. Although Ning Zhongfei and Lan Yu persuaded Ning Qingxue again and again, she just wasn't willing to leave this house. They were helpless, so they could only let her be. Li Mumei stayed behind with Ning Qingxue for the moment, but they needed to return to Yu State. Mumei, how is it? Ning Qingxue still kept remembered Li Mumei saying that she would be able to invite out a few journalists. She wanted to know from the journalist how the case was progressing so she could know Yimo's current state. I've asked, and tonight, the police department of Ninghai City will hold a press conference, and one of Jingwen's friend will be there. We'll go together tomorrow to see that person, but Qingxue, I feel that this thing is actually beneficial to us, so there is no need to see the journalists, Li Mumei said. Of course, Ning Qingxue knew what she wanted to ask about, but she couldn't explain to Li Mumei, so she could only say, "It might be related to me, let's go make sure." Li Mumei knew that it was someone from the Song family that had died. However, since it was Ning Qingxue's wish, she couldn't really stop her. Chapter 83. I Can't Let You Go. Chapter 83. I Can't Let You Go. Yimo cultivated another big cycle, and when he had finished, it was already noon. He felt that all the injuries in his body were gone and was full of vigor. Even his power increased a little. If he progressed a little more, he would reach the peak of the second stage. Although he wasn't there yet, he knew that such a minor improvement on such a desolate place, scarce of spirit chi, was quite significant. He wasn't disappointed at all. He looked by his side. Yun Bing had gotten up and wasn't in the room. It seemed that she went out. Yimo got up and saw the toothbrush and toothpaste Yun Bing prepared for him and washed his face. Ding ding, the doorbell sounded. Yimo scanned with his spirit sense immediately and saw that the person standing at the door wasn't Yun Bing, but a 20 or so year-old girl. However, she didn't seem that much younger than Yun Bing. Although she wasn't as pretty as Yun Bing, her chest area was a bit more generous. In Yimo's impression, out of every girl he knew, the bustiest was Wendong. However, the chest of the girl in front of the door was even bigger than Wendong's. Seeing her look, if she hadn't been that young, Yimo would have thought this girl was already married. However, he didn't have much experience with women, so it would be normal if he was wrong. An unknown girl came to Yun Bing's home, and even if Yun Bing was at home, he would tell her not to open the door. So now that she wasn't here, there was no reason for him to open it. After all, he was on the run right now. The girl waited for a while and saw that nobody answered the door. So she said to herself, "Sister Bing isn't at school and isn't at home either. Where could she be?" Afterward, Yimo saw her leaving and finally felt relieved, as he didn't want this woman to come in. However, he soon realized how unlucky he was because, at this moment, Yun Bing was coming back, carrying a lot of things including a bag, but it wasn't his. "Huh, Sister Bing, where did you go? I looked everywhere, from the school to here, and I finally found you." This girl immediately screamed in joy when she saw Yun Bing. "Healy, why did you come? When did you come to Ninghai?" Yun Bing replied immediately, but soon, Healy saw Yun Bing's anxious face and seemed to have understood her situation. "Obviously, it's because I have something to talk to you about. Hurry and open the door. I'll tell you inside," Healy said immediately. Yun Bing hesitated at the door but didn't open. "What, Sister Bing? You're not going to make me tell you here, are you? I came from so far away, and you're not even going to let me in and sit for a while. It's not like you have a man hiding inside. Why are you afraid of opening the door?" Healy saw Yun Bing still wouldn't take out the keys and immediately joked. Yun Bing's face blushed and stuttered, Healy, why don't we talk outside? "I have someone at home." "Huh. Sister Bing, you have a boyfriend? Then I must go inside to meet him. I must see what sort of person can conquer your distant heart." Healy immediately shouted in surprise. Yun Bing hesitated for a while. She wasn't someone who didn't know what was at stake. Although Healy was a good friend of hers, Yimo's identity was too special. Thinking about this, she bit her teeth and said, "Healy, how about I present you to him next time? He is still naked at home." Healy looked at Yun Bing for a long while as though she discovered an alien before saying, "Sister Bing, I really didn't know you were so open. You're even sleeping together. Who is this guy? No, make him dress up. I must meet him." But his clothes were ripped last night. Yun Bing couldn't find a better excuse in the spur of the moment. Healy opened her eyes wider again and examined Yun Bing from head to toe before sighing. "Sister Bing, you really are strong. How long does it take off the clothes? You guys can't even wait for that scene. Oh my God." Yun Bing's face was blushing red, but she couldn't explain it. "Okay, seeing how you're so embarrassed, I won't go inside and disturb your romance. I just came here to tell you that Feng Rong came back. He was asking for your news everywhere, but I don't think this Feng Rong is trustworthy. Be careful of him. I'm here to participate in the press conference, so I won't chat with you now. Next time, remember to bring your boyfriend and show me." Healy turned and left after talking. Yun Bing looked at Healy's disappearing back before she was relieved and let out a sigh. She finally managed to trick her to go away. Unfortunately, the cost was to expose her non-existent wildness and promiscuity. Yun Bing opened the door and saw Yemo, who stood at the doorway. She was so scared that she immediately closed the doors and said worriedly, "You're not well yet. Why did you get up?" Yemo said with gratitude, "Mrs. Yun, thank you for what you did just then. You heard it all?" Yun Bing thought about the fact that Yemo was standing behind the door as soon as she had asked the question, so he must have heard it. However, she also remembered her words, and her face started to change. She wondered what Yemo would think of her. "Yeah, I heard it all. That was really hard for you. So if there's the opportunity in the future, I will definitely come back and repay your goodwill. However, I have already troubled you for 2 days," Yemo said with guilt. He was someone who would respect those who respected him more and split his debt and enmity very clearly. He paid animosity with animosity and goodwill with goodwill. "I didn't really help you, and from now on, don't call me Mrs. Yun. I feel it's a bit awkward." Yun Bing remembered the time when she slept beside Yemo. They had slept together, despite not doing anything. Yun Bing still felt calling her that was a bit weird. However, Yun Bing suddenly realized the implication of his words and said in shock, "What did your words just then meant? Are you leaving?" Yemo nodded and said, "Yes, I have already bothered you for many days. You saved me, and I can't stay at your place any longer. That would be endangering you. I have recovered now, and I need to leave. By the way, did you help me look for my bag?" "No, I can't let you go." Yun Bing just said half her sentence when she saw the shock on Yemo's face. She immediately blushed and changed her tone. "I meant that it's too dangerous outside. They are searching for you everywhere. If you go out now, it would be suicide." Yemo felt warm in his heart. Yun Bing was the typical cold-faced, yet warm-hearted woman. He had just helped her once, and she repaid him with this much. She even neglected her reputation for him. "Sister Bing, I know that you're saying this for my sake, but in fact, I have the means to escape. You can rest assured." Yemo felt the need to change the way he called her from Mrs. Yun to Sister Bing. Seeing Yemo change his words, Yun Bing's face eased down. She stayed silent for a moment before saying, "Yemo, stay for another night? In fact, when you sleep at my house, my sleep is also a lot better. It was like that last night, so just think of it as helping me, can you?" Yemo looked at Yun Bing in disbelief. With her ruddy face, she actually looked stunningly enticing and beautiful. He knew that Yun Bing was afraid that he would be caught immediately after he left. Seeing Yemo look at her for so long without talking, the ruddiness on her face retreated and turned white. Just when she wanted to say something, Yemo spoke. "Fine. Sister Bing, I think you're right. I'll leave tomorrow morning then. Perhaps that's when it would be the safest." Seeing Yemo agree to her, Yun Bing's face was beaming with joy. She acted like a little child trying to please an adult and brought out the bag in her hands. "All your things are in here. I also bought a lot of food, and I'll cook for you in a moment so that you can fill your stomach." Chapter 84. The Prince Charming That Descended from the Heaven. Chapter 84. The Prince Charming That Descended from the Heaven. Ning Qingxue didn't like Starbucks and never went there to drink coffee. She disliked the so-called North American style and even didn't like the cake inside. However, today she had to go to Starbucks because the journalist friend of Su Jingwen loved their coffee. "Mumei, Qingxue, this way." As soon as Ning Qingxue and Li Mumei came, Su Jingwen called out from a table near the window. Beside her sat a tall-figured woman. She was good-looking too. "Let me introduce. This is my friend Xiao Lei. She is the most famous journalist in Beijing. She always charges to the front line and gets every first-hand news." "Xiao Lei, they are my friends Mumei and Qingxue." Su Jingwen introduced for both sides. "Hello, Qingxue, Mumei. I've heard of the big name Ning Qingxue, the prettiest girl in Beijing. When I saw you today, I feel so self-conscious, haha." Xiao Lei also stood up and shook their hands. "Big journalist Xiao, I've heard of you. Last time I was on your blog looking at your posts from when you won a flowing snake. I didn't think I would meet you in Ninghai so fast. It's a real honor. Li Mumei was better at communicating and became familiar with Xiao Lei very quickly. Xiao Lei smiled and said, if it wasn't for someone who saved me last time, perhaps I wouldn't even be able to come back. Then, Xiao Lei looked at Ning Qingxue. Of course, she knew that Ning Qingxue had a fiancé called Yemo, and the person who saved her was also called Yemo. But she wouldn't think these two would be the same person. The difference was too huge. Perhaps everyone in Beijing knew what sort of a fiancé Ning Qingxue had. How could he be that Yemo and Flowing Snake? What do you want to drink? Su Jingwen was the host today. Li Mumei didn't really care and casually ordered a mocha. I don't mind. Ning Qingxue didn't like coffee anyway. The main reason she came today was to find out about Yemo. As for drinks, she didn't care at all. The four girls who sat on Su Jingwen's table were all gorgeous. Soon, they attracted the eyes of everyone in the cafeteria, which made Ning Qingxue uncomfortable. Xiao Lei, I've also heard about you. I really admire your journalism spirit. Although Ning Qingxue hadn't been to Beijing, she had still heard about the famous journalist Xiao Lei. Although Li Mumei didn't know why Ning Qingxue cared so much about the case last night, it should be related to the Song family. So she asked for Ning Qingxue. Xiao Lei, I heard Jingwen say that you came to Ninghai to interview in that case. How is that going? Li Mumei seemed to ask casually, so Xiao Lei didn't care too much. She just thought they found a topic she was familiar to talk about. She took a sip of the coffee and said, they still haven't captured the fugitive yet, but it's said that the family of the victim already know who the culprit is. They just don't have solid evidence yet since this culprit was very cunning. Before he went in, he destroyed all the surveillance apparatus. Ning Qingxue felt her heart feeling relieved after hearing that the culprit wasn't caught. For the first time, she drank coffee. There was a faint taste of milk, and the texture was silky smooth. Suddenly, Ning Qingxue felt that this coffee wasn't bad. It had a lot less bitter flavor than what she had tasted previously. Song Xiaotan was killed, so this time, the Song family will go crazy. The Song family is indeed too cocky, so it's not a surprise that people have made a move on them. It seems that one can't be too arrogant. Li Mumei didn't have the slightest sympathy for the death of Song Xiaotan and didn't hide the meaning of her words. However, Xiao Lei shook her head. The craziest issue this time isn't about the Song family. Although they are still crazy, they have a lot of descendants. This time, a crazier one is related to another one of the people murdered. He's called Qian Shiping. Qian Shiping? Both Ning Qingxue and Li Mumei hadn't heard of this name before and were a bit surprised. Who could get crazier than the Song family? Who is Qian Shiping? Although Su Jingwen was curious, she didn't have to ask, but Ning Qingxue had to because it concerned Emo's safety. As if confused at Ning Qingxue's desperation, Su Jingwen glanced at Ning Qingxue. In her eyes, Ning Qingxue shouldn't have so much curiosity toward these things, unlike ordinary people. But now, she was more curious than her. This was indeed strange. Although Xiao Lei had heard of Ning Qingxue, she didn't really know her personality, so she explained, the name Qian Shiping isn't much, but the main point is, his dad is called Qian Baihe, but he has another name, Qianlong Tu. Qianlong Tu? Ning Qingxue felt this name was familiar, but couldn't remember who it was. Qianlong Tu is the underground leader of one of the gang in Northeast Asia, Nanqing. His influence is so huge that it is said he would have the means to find even a needle dropped in the ocean. But now, his only son was killed. Do you think he would stop with his power? So this thing is quite serious. We just don't know Qianlong Tu's reaction yet. Before Xiao Lei finished speaking, the coffee cup that Ning Qingxue just raised suddenly splattered on the table, spilling coffee everywhere. Although she didn't understand what Nanqing represented exactly, it didn't mean she didn't know what Nanqing was. She just didn't expect Yemo to get into conflict with someone so powerful. Immediately, she felt unrest. Qingxue, what's wrong? Li Mumei asked concerningly. She thought Ning Qingxue's wounds hadn't healed yet. Su Jingwen also noticed that there was something wrong with Ning Qingxue. Her face didn't seem as normal as before and quickly changed the topic. Let's not talk about this. It's too depressing. Xiao Lei, tell us about your experience last time at Flowing Snake. I also want to go there for my holiday. Xiao Lei, who initially had her eyes on Ning Qingxue, was immediately attracted by the topic. Hearing Su Jingwen's words, she hurriedly waved her hand. Jingwen, you must not go to Flowing Snake. If I wasn't saved by Yimo last time, I wouldn't be alive now. Yimo? Li Mumei, Ning Qingxue, and Su Jingwen almost said this name at the same time. After Xiao Lei had spoken, she knew that she said it wrong and quickly corrected her meaning. It's Yimo, but not Qingxue's. Sorry, I didn't realize that the person who saved me was also called Yimo. Ning Qingxue returned to herself and smiled. It doesn't matter, I don't mind. Xiao Lei, can you tell me about it? Seeing Ning Qingxue calm down instead, she started retelling her encounters in Flowing Snake. To be honest, I really didn't think that Wang Qianjun was that sort of person. He paid 50 grand and just dumped me there while he ran for himself. He actually gave me to a bunch of bandits. Huh, I didn't see this on your blog. Then what did you do after? Li Mumei also started to worry here. Xiao Lei's eyes suddenly became obsessed as she mumbled, at that time. He was like a prince charming that descended from the heavens and knocked all the bandits out. The way he flew was too handsome. His kicks, I can never forget in my entire life. I have never seen someone with such high martial arts skills. I thought this was all TV action scenes, but it happened to me that day. Hearing Xiao Lei's recount, even Su Jingwen and Li Mumei felt an anxiety and longing towards that scene. However, Ning Qingxue felt more and more that the person was the Yimo she longed for. Chapter 85. All right, we'll both sleep on the bed then. Chapter 85. All right, we'll both sleep on the bed then, Xiao Lei. Since you're so pretty, did he want to keep contact with you? Li Mumei immediately was interested. Xiao Lei shook her head and said bitterly, to be honest, I was interested in him at that moment. I'm sure that was love at first sight. However, I'm not his Snow White. He didn't give me any chance at all. He didn't even give me his number. Su Jingwen couldn't contain herself and laughed out loud. Journalist Xiao, she has the perfect body and the perfect face. Look at this chest of hers. Even I'm scared. How can you be afraid that you can't find your prince? Seeing Su Jingwen make jokes about her, Xiao Lei surprisingly didn't laugh. Instead, she shook her head again and said, you don't understand my feeling at the time. At my most helpless moment, someone came down from the heavens and saved me. I didn't read too much fairy tales. This is real. Perhaps you guys haven't experienced it and can't understand my feeling. But he's so handsome. Perhaps that's not called handsome, but I don't know what it's called. Xiao Lei actually felt dejected. Xiao Lei, can you describe what he looks like to us? Ning Qingxue suddenly asked shakily. They were all thinking to themselves and didn't notice Ning Qingxue's weird tone. He looked around 20 years old wearing an ordinary light blue shirt. His skin looked very good, and he had a gentle appearance. His eyes were very soft and looked very comfortable. He appeared to be almost 180 centimeters and doesn't look extraordinarily handsome, but his face was clearly distinguished and very pleasant to look at. When he smiled, he looked very confident as if he wouldn't care even if the heavens were collapsing. His nose was very sharp, his teeth very white. By the way, I have his photo. Hurry up and take it out, Li Mumei said. They still didn't get a clear image after Xiao Lei described for so long. The only real notion they could imagine would be his height. Xiao Lei took out an exquisite mirror from her bag and passed the mirror while mocking herself. The photo is here, but I took it secretly last time. I'm already in an unrequited love now. But even if she didn't say it, they could tell from Xiao Lei's tone and this exquisite mirror that she really had those feelings. Otherwise, why would a mirror holding a photo be so exquisite? Ning Qingxue took over the mirror shakily, and suddenly as she saw the picture, she dropped the mirror. Luckily, it was caught by Su Jingwen beside her. Seeing Ning Qingxue make the same mistake twice, Li Mumei said worriedly, Qingxue, are you really all right? How about we leave earlier? Ning Qingxue only nodded and still didn't talk, but Su Jingwen shouted in surprise. It really is Yimo? He is called Yimo. Xiao Lei only spoke half a sentence before realizing something wasn't right. She looked at Su Jingwen in surprise. What did you mean by it really is Yimo? Li Mumei took over the mirror and also said in surprise, Qingxue, it really is him. Why did he go to Flowing Snake? Xiaolei felt something was wrong and looking inquisitively towards Su Jingwen. Su Jingwen smiled bitterly and said, he is Qingxue's current husband, Yimo. I just don't know why he would go to Flowing Snake. Qingxue's husband? Xiaolei repeated. A sudden unknown feeling welled up, making her face feel hot. But then, she said immediately, didn't Qingxue already break the marriage agreement? Su Jingwen looked at Xiaolei and said, Xiaolei, it's not surprising that you don't know. Although her family had broken the marriage agreement, Qingxue still married him in the end, but the wedding was just very discreet. At that time, you were probably into bed, and you probably went a Flowing Snake as soon as you came back, so you probably didn't hear about this. Now, Qingxue is still married to Yimo. They didn't divorce. The reason Su Jingwen said this was to point out that Yimo was still Ning Qingxue's husband right now, and make Xiaolei be more careful with her words. However, she was also being euphemistic. How was Qingxue and Yimo's wedding discreet? It was almost as though they didn't have one. They just went to collect a marriage certificate. Huh? Xiaolei looked at Ning Qingxue awkwardly. She didn't expect the man she secretly admired and kept a photo of to be the husband of the girl sitting in front of her right now. Sorry, Qingxue, I really didn't know that Yimo was your husband. It was because I heard that he's a... Xiaolei felt very awkward. At the same time, she felt a deep sense of disappointment and unfairness. She didn't understand why the Yimo she had met would be Ning Qingxue's husband. If that Yimo was really the useless person the Yi family kicked out, how could he be so strong and so calm? Even if he was that disabled Yimo, how can someone like Ning Qingxue marry him? Yun Bing cooked a table full of dishes. Yimo hadn't eaten a good meal for a long time, so she was afraid that it would affect his body. Hence, she went out today and bought a lot of vegetables. As if having an extra person made the house a lot more lively, Yun Bing also felt much happier. If she hadn't been worrying about what Yimo had done, perhaps she would be even happier. At this moment, she felt that she wasn't merciless Bing. She didn't want to be merciless Bing. Perhaps it was because no one was able to make her truly feel happy all these years. Actually, Yimo didn't really do anything, but he rendered her a feeling of reliability. Perhaps it was because she didn't have a man in her life for a long time. Although she knew that her thinking was wrong, she couldn't stop her subconscious thinking. She had hoped more than once that Yimo hadn't done those things. He was an abandoned son. His fiancée also broke the marriage pact with him. Moreover, his body had that unspeakable problem. However, Yun Bing secretly thought that she didn't mind these things and liked the feeling of sleeping next to Yimo. It was very comfortable and relaxing, but she knew that she could only think about it for a few moments and didn't even dare to say it or even consider it properly. She was already an impure woman and much older than him. Besides, there were the eyes of the society judging her. Sigh. Yun Bing wondered once again if only Yimo wasn't on the wanted list yet. Perhaps only she knew of his excellence. After dinner, Yimo wanted to sleep early. This was because he needed to run at night and needed to save up enough stamina. He was very grateful toward Yun Bing for bringing back everything. The silver heart grass and the purple heart vine were all very precious to him and weren't something he could find easily. You sleep on the bed tonight, and I'll sleep on the couch. Although Yun Bing liked the feeling of sleeping beside Yimo, she was also afraid she would wake up hugging Yimo once more. She didn't dare to sleep on the bed at night. Yimo shook his head. I'm the man. I sleep the couch, you sleep on the bed. No, your body hasn't recovered yet. How can you sleep on the couch? Yun Bing immediately rejected his proposal. All right, we'll both sleep on the bed then. Wasn't it like that last night as well? Yimo didn't even care if he slept with Yun Bing. He only felt grateful towards Yun Bing, nothing else. Okay. Yun Bing didn't even try to object slightly. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.